Greetings! Allow me to welcome you to The Love of Fiction, a podcast dedicated to discussing story and character across a wide range of mediums. I am your host, Gavin Groves, and with me, coming down the aisle, no, I'm not going to do that, is Mr. Mark Tobit.
You can't see it right now, man. I'm flexing, giving it all of that. So.
I mean, are we talking like, Yokozuna style flexing, or are we talking Rick Rude style flexing?
No, man, I'm going for the great. I'm doing the Hulk Hogan.
You're doing Hulk Hogan?
The three-stage pose, man. You know what I'm talking about.
Okay. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Just the usual.
What have you been up to?
Not too much this week, although I have checked out one or two things.
And what's that?
One, I've actually checked out one movie that is actually made by the same studio as the movie that we're going to be reviewing a little bit later on today.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, independent.
Gone after you. Sorry.
Oh, but they're an independent studio called A24.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a studio which I've been noticing increasingly over the last couple of years. They've been connected with a lot of very good movies. And
sorry, just stop you there. Truth be told, after watching The Iron Claw, I am kind of like interested in checking out like the director's other stuff. Actually, like quite down for that.
Oh yeah, so, director as well. This is the production house that produced the movie. But they're connected.
Sorry, can I ask you, is it anything to do with the BBC? Because I swear I saw a BBC logo flash up when I was watching the film.
I honestly don't know. I mean, A24 is separate from that, but they've made a whole number of movies I've seen, which likes of Ex Machina back in 2015.
Oh yeah, I've still not seen that. So
I've been going on about you for that for a while.
I know. Everyone says it's his best film as well. And I was talking to, who was I talking to the other day? Oh, my friend Jamie watched Civil War. And it was.
That was actually what I was about to talk about.
Oh, what a coincidence! What a coincidence! So, Civil War. Then, what did you think?
It's actually a really strong movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it impressed me.
Spoiler free, please, because Alex Garland is a director that I may have mentioned before this when we talked about Annihilation. I do try to watch his movies when I can, because even if he misses, they're always interesting.
Yes. And this movie is interesting. I mean, one thing that impressed me most about this movie is the fact that despite the fact it's talking about a civil war between political parties in America, they still managed to keep any concept of Democrat or Republican out of it. So there's no sort of like, it can't be lauded or decried by any specific side over in America. It is, I mean, one aspect of it is the fact that Texas and California have formed an alliance against Washington. Which at that point you turn around and go, well, I don't know if that's the Democrats or the Republicans. It's a real kind of, the whole point is it's not about politics in this. This is all about journalism and about the people that are willing to go into these sort of environments specifically to capture the shot and be there at the moment so that the real nitty-gritty isn't hidden from the eyes of the world. It's immensely interesting for what it is. I mean, it's a very on-the-ground movie. You don't get anything at the large scale of a war in America. It's very much from the point of view of the main characters as they slowly make their way through the country. So a lot of stuff is happening in the background or behind the scenes that you're not aware of until later. So to that end, I mean, the explosions and all that, you're not there for that. It's more about these characters and understanding why it is they do what they do, the war journalism.
Kirsten Dunst, isn't it? I saw it in the trailer. I've not seen her for a while.
Actually, really good role. She really does it well.
I don't think she's a bad actress. I've never thought she was bad. But
this is a bit away from what I've seen her do before. So it's more of a jaded journalist who's watched death in other countries and is now seeing it happen in her own country.
Mm-hmm.
And she appreciates the importance, and she gets, for want of a better term, a protege against her will that joins her on this journey. A girl that's more passionate about it than she is. And she decides that if she's going to come along for the ride, the least she can do is guide her. It's a story that easily could have been grabbed by either political party and held up or used as some sort of lightning rod, cause arguments on either side of the platforms when it comes to politics. But it doesn't really, I mean, there are allusions, but it doesn't allow itself to really get into that sort of argument. So I was impressed.
I heard that Garland is like talking about never directing ever again and only writing, screenwriting.
I see. I mean, I imagine screenwriting is, well, I'm not going to say it's easier.
Well, he writes his own film. He writes his own films, doesn't he? Always.
But when you're screenwriting, it's just you and the typewriter or whatever, rather than directing is a much more of a vast project of managing all sorts of different people.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was due to like, interference,
Yeah, like
studio
sort of.
Yeah,
meddling.
producer. Yeah, I always got the impression that like, I think we mentioned this in a previous episode when we talked about Annihilation. The ending to Sunshine was studio meddling. With that monster at the end.
You need a big bad. You can't just have the sun be the villain.
That's to say, the movie's got the biggest big bad in the universe. That's a big bad. It doesn't get bigger than the sun. Like no one can.
Yeah. Are you sure you can't put a romantic subplot into this?
Just God. But yeah, I'm interested in seeing it. So yeah.
Take some time. It's as I say, it's not going to blow your mind, but it is a good story.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that's pretty much going to sum up a lot of Garland's sort of like stories, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself, man?
So most, I suppose, interesting for me personally, I have come to the decision that I have been called well-read by tutors. I don't think I'm well-read enough, to be honest with you. So,
to be fair, I feel that you will never be well-read enough in your own mind to call yourself well-read.
Exactly. There's still holes, in my.
There's books out, they're yet to be conquested.
Yeah, exactly. So, decided like this summer, I'm gonna try and just read a few books that I've not. I've been meaning to read for years and I've got round to, and one of those is one of the. I've read a few books by Charles Dickens, and I just recently read Great Expectations. Have you read Dickens before? I can't remember ever. Probably not since school, surely.
Yeah. Oh no, man.
Oh really? Really? Why?
I don't like Great Expectations.
Have you read it?
Yeah, but I read it.
Okay.
I read it under duress.
Okay. Why don't you like it?
Because I was forced to read it under duress. It was because of my English class at school.
Yeah.
And that was not the kind of book that I was into at the time. I like Dickens. I like some Dickens. I mean, I've read Oliver Twist. I've read Christmas Carol. I've read his more kid-friendly stuff.
Yes.
Great Expectations is not a kid-friendly in that way. It's not as easily accessible as, say, Christmas Carol.
No, definitely not.
And I just found it a little droll. Like it just really kind of did not grab me. I mean, I imagine that you probably because you've got an older perspective to take on it compared to me when I read it when I was 13 years old.
Yes, I if I'm honest, I didn't read. I don't think I read Dickens at school, believe it or not. I mean, you went to a grammar school, didn't you? Whereas I didn't.
Yeah, we did Shakespeare, Dickens, all of that.
I did Shakespeare, but I did. I went to comprehensive school, and I remember reading Huckleberry Finn. Actually, That's actually one I really want to go back to.
Actually, I wouldn't mind checking out. I haven't got around to that.
Yeah, I'd like to read. I remember reading it at school. Anyway, and enjoying it. But anyway, Dickens is one that is obviously important, and I don't know. Like, I find reading Dickens comes with a certain amount of caveats. Like, when you read his bigger stories, they are at their heart actually very good stories, but there are certain hallmarks of the era and hallmarks of his style, the Dickensian style, that sort of, I would say, sort of blemish the novel as a whole. It's have you ever heard the phrase Bildungsroman? Ever heard that? Bildungsroman?
No.
It's a literary term for a coming of age story, often involving morality and growth of a young person over the course of a novel. Obviously, the Great Expectations is about Pip, isn't it? Growing up, through a series of events. To be honest with you, I haven't actually read Dickens for a few years, and I actually quite enjoyed this one because I've forgotten. This is one he wrote later. His writing style is actually really good and quite funny and quite accessible, and I really, really enjoyed the gothic atmosphere that he was commanding in a lot of the really famous scenes. I actually thought Miss Havisham was a brilliant character. Do you remember Miss Havisham?
faintly. Was she the mother or the governess or something of?
She is almost, technically speaking, you could say she is the governess of Estella. Technically speaking,
And Estella's the one that mocked him for not knowing, for calling knaves jacks or something, wasn't it? When they were playing cards.
Basically, the point of the story is that Miss Havisham was set up to marry this character. I'm not going to give away massive spoilers, even though it's a really famous book, but fine. And who is important to the story. And she gets jilted at the altar, and she becomes jaded, and her like iconic image is her still in her wedding dress. And while she's not like viewed as old, like Dickens sort of portrays her as being old. I think she's supposed to be in her 30s, but she's never left this like castle.
Dickensian era, that's almost middle-aged, isn't it? So...
Absolutely. But the fact is, she hasn't seen light for years, and she just sits in this chair and like she sends for boys to be brought to her that she can torture emotionally because she hates men so much. And like, it's just a really iconic character, a really, really, really iconic character. And like, I did actually like get quite invested in the ongoing like Pip's ongoing journey, going from like, you know, being brought up by his sister and her blacksmith partner, and then like becoming like a gentleman in the city, and like just going through life and trying to make sense of everything. And I actually really enjoyed it. The big twist over how he managed to do this, because obviously he comes into money, and he believes it's actually Havisham who's giving him the money, but it's actually, you know, it's not. It's someone else who's like important to the story. And like, yeah, I was quite into this. But I say the caveat is that like these stories, Dickens stories, apart from the tight ones, the small ones, are full of characters. There are so many characters that you have to like really, really pay attention on who's speaking to really get the overall grasp of the story, which is one of the reasons why I think that sometimes it can be a bit of a drudge to get through, because the narrative sort of switches to other characters, and while you're interested in, say, one character, it then switches to another character, and I often find that plays with my expectations a little bit, and I sometimes get a bit fed up with like the switches, and I don't pay attention, and then I realise that this character that I'm not really interested in is actually really important and becomes interesting later on, and I've not paid attention. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I had this problem with A Tale of Two Cities, which I read years ago, and I actually read it twice. Because the first time I read it, I got 3/4 way through it and realised I had no idea what was going on, because there were so many characters, and I used like a Wikipedia entry to keep track of all the characters and all their names and who they are. And I did that with this book. And every time a character came up, I was like, "Oh, this character again?" Go to the Wikipedia entry. Oh, it's this character. Just to remind myself constantly of who it is. Because the other thing about Dickens is that you had these Dickensian names. You know, there's like you just read them and they just come off the tongue. You know. I'm trying to think like Abel Magwitch, John Wemmick, Compeyson, Arthur Havisham. You know, they all sound the same. What was it? Well, there was Matthew Pocket,
Ebenezer Scrooge.
You know, Joe Gargery, Mr. Pumblechook. You know, like very, very like odd names that are very like typical to like
but
his
still
work.
Flow well. Yeah,
they do. Yeah, it's because there is a great eloquence to his story, but it's hard to remember a lot of these names. You know. Which is the problem, as I said. But yeah, he does. He has like there are several sequences in this book, despite the fact this book was fucking published in like 1861. You know, it's like 120 years old.
40. It's a testament to itself. With Dickens, that his work is still very much lauded, even in this modern era.
Did you know that he actually wrote For Poor People?
Yeah, because. With regards to what? Oh, sorry, you go first.
It's okay, because literature was generally accepted to be of like for middle class and upper class, because it was you had to pay for it,
mm-hmm.
You know, and you had to pay for education to read. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Dickens specifically wrote like in a more simplified style compared to other authors at the time. How much that carries today is hard to say. Different time. But what he used to do free readings of his work for poor people. Free readings out of his own time.
He wanted it to be accessible.
Exactly. That's amazing, isn't it? After you.
I was going to say that not too long ago there was a dramatisation made by the BBC called "The Man Who Wrote Christmas."
Oh, really? Okay.
The story of Charles Dickens writing Christmas Carol.
Okay.
And how he was writing it. He was intending to write just a short story for the masses for Christmas.
Yes.
And he was trying to think of a story that would appeal to everybody.
Yes.
And it's interesting seeing him go through the creative process. I mean, a lot of it is artistic license. But it is you can imagine a character walking around his study trying to find the right name for his protagonist and just kind of trying different words until eventually he drops on Scrooge and he goes, that's it. That's the one.
It sounds like it, doesn't it? It's, phonetically, like Dickens had great attention to detail. You can almost hear a character's name and just know whether they're like dark or evil or silly or pompous.
To the point where they're like, and even Scrooge's name has become almost a verb in modern parlance. Because it's like these characters have become iconic.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And like, who do you think is the best Scrooge, Mark?
I stand by it and fuck everyone who goes against me on this, but for me, it's always going to be Michael Caine.
I knew you were going to say that. That's why
I know, man. Man, the Muppets got it right, and I'll fight anybody that says otherwise.
Truthfully shown, it's a great book and it stands up really, really, really well to this day. I studied it at uni actually and wrote. I'm really proud of that essay I wrote about that. So I just wanted to just throw that in there really. That this is a great book and I really enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, I probably think I'd read it again. Actually, I actually think I probably would because there's just so many characters. There's probably stuff I missed. I have read a synopsis and read some like essays on the themes of the novel and stuff and whatever, and since then just sort of get more. And so not sure what's going to be next. I think I've got another Hemingway on the shelf I need to read actually, so I think that's going to be next. But yeah, that's what I've been up to in the last couple of weeks, mate. So anyway. Finally, Mark, we are going to talk about wrestling. We've been waiting to talk about wrestling in depth for a long time, haven't we?
Oh, yes. It's just been waiting for the right time.
Well, yeah, we were sort of throwing around ideas for episodes. And then, of course, this beautiful film, The Iron Claw, came out at just the right time. Obviously, we've not quite timed the episode for when the film came out. Because I didn't get to see it at the cinema at the time, unfortunately. Did you see it at the cinema?
I did not.
Okay. Anyway, so yes, we'll be going to do a little. You are going to lead a conversation on the Iron Claw, a little chat about that, and then after the break, we're going to be running down our top 10 wrestlers of all time. Because why the hell not? Yeah. Let's indulge. In the previous episode, we did sort of talk about our introductions to wrestling and early years, maybe I can't remember. So we'll skip all that, and we're just gonna have a conversation about our favorite wrestlers as well. So. I'll say how should we say that? We need like a wrestling allegory. Jump over the ropes, maybe? Jump over the ropes into a break?
We're going to workshop it. We'll come back with something better for the next break.
Excellent. Okay, so be right back.
Okay, so welcome back. And in this first segment, we're going to be getting into the Iron Claw. But I want to start a touch more general than that first. Now, me and Gav, we've been into wrestling for the better part of our lives at this point. It's got to be like 3/4, if not more.
Yes, for me, it's definitely 30 years.
Exactly. Me, myself, similar. I still remember when I was a young...
Wait a minute. 30 years? Fuck. How old are we? Jesus, dude.
I know, man. This is a form of storytelling that's been a part of our lives longer than almost every other type of storytelling we're into, save for maybe cinema and comics. And books to a degree as well. And wrestling is one of those things that I was always enamored by. The glitz and the glamour and the showboating, the pantomime, everything about it. But
that's the era that we discovered it, isn't it? That we discovered wrestling. Well, I discovered wrestling in like at the height of like the WWFs, as it was called then, the pantomime cartoon character era. Was you into it then? I can't remember. Was it WCW?
Yes, I was. I had the Doink and Crush and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I started a bit before that, but I was still watching during the Doink and Crush era.
Yeah, that's classic times. The open air SummerSlam and all of that.
Yes.
And as I got older, I found that I was drawn to more of the behind-the-scenes stuff that happened not on camera, but was happening away from the camera. Often the lore behind the scenes was just as interesting to me as what these characters were playing out on screen. And in more recent years, I actually found myself especially drawn to one website called Pro Wrestling Stories, which is just a comprehensive list of all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes in wrestling, all the different stories. And not all of them are good. Some of them are horrible. They're horrifying and they're heartbreaking. Because at the end of the day, these are real people too. And whether it be the likes of the loss of Eddie Guerrero or the fatal breakdown of Chris Benoit, these stories are, whilst they are deeply upsetting, they're also morbidly fascinating at the same time. It's a hard thing to process sometimes, but I do find myself drawn to it.
Part of the plot, I think, what it is, Mark, is that wrestling was, up until I want to say the 2010s, such a protected business because it protected itself.
Oh, the kayfabe. Yeah.
Kayfabe, exactly. Which means like to act like it's real if you're not a wrestling fan.
It's a carny term, yeah.
Yeah. That they got like wrestlers were treated like shit. I mean, in terms of like when you talk about, you know, the caliber of wrestlers in a federation, you often use the phrase, you know, like mid carder or low level carder or main event
jerker,
yeah. And like, unless you were like in the top 70%, for the most part, from what I've read in autobiographies, because this is another thing as well, is that like kind of like porn stars, you know, when wrestlers get to a certain age, they can't work anymore. Well, tell that to some of them, but a lot of them can't work anymore, or they get too many injuries and they have to retire, and so they end up making money by just like telling stories, don't they, about what happened. And I think with that and the rise of the internet, and the sharing of information and the general acceptance that, you know, with the internet, wrestling cannot pretend it's real anymore. It just can't do it anymore. Fans are too smart, as they say.
The dirt sheets have evolved. So
yeah, everyone's evolved. You can't pretend anymore. You can when you watch it, like, you know, but outside of it, you can't. It's not the same.
And I feel having that knowledge doesn't take anything away from the product itself.
It's about you know, suspension of disbelief in the grand scheme of things. Can you suspend your disbelief?
Absolutely. I mean, the same reason that I can suspend my disbelief when I watch The Matrix. It's like, yeah, you can turn around to someone and say, "Oh, wrestling's fake." It's like, no, it's not fake. It's scripted. There's a subtle difference there.
Well, not always, mate. That's the thing. You have to remember that, like, in like the 80s, for example, and in the 90s, we got in DDP, but Macho Man in the 80s was a rare breed. The kind of wrestlers that used to like move for move script their matches.
Yes, okay, I will give you that one. He was a lunatic. So.
When it came to that, you know, like obviously there's the really famous Hogan versus Warrior, you know, WrestleMania 6 match, the meeting of the two most popular wrestlers of the era, you know, in a sort of passing of the torch moment, and they like carefully scripted it moment for moment so that neither of them looked weak or neither of them looked stronger than the other. You know, even though Hogan lost the match, spoilers, he had to look strong in defeat, didn't he? So,
because he was still the moneymaker. So.
Well, they were trying to pass the torch. But what I'm saying to you is that like matches of that like that were actually not the norm. And that and what often happened is that they were given like a couple. They give each other a couple of pointers, like, oh yeah, when I get on this bit, I'm going to do this, by the way, and that, this is the finish. They get told what the finish is, or they say you can do the finish, and then they come up with the finish. But for the most part, they would gauge the match through making it up on the fly based on audience reaction, how the audience is reacting to what they're doing, which I think is like incredible. Really, there's a discussion to be had, isn't there, about what's better, you know, what's more pro wrestling?
What, the free flow in the ring or
the scripting, you know?
Yeah. And there are masters of both.
Yeah,
as you say, on one side you've got the likes of DDP and Macho Man, who would plan it down to the meticulous detail, whilst you've got other wrestlers that were much more free flow. They'd get in the ring and call it, like to Shawn Michaels and the like.
That's right.
much more of a reactive wrestler who would read the audience and thrived off the audience, to be honest. So
yeah.
But moving it more towards behind the scenes, there were stories taking place for all of those characters as well in their own personal demons. Everyone had demons in some fashion or another, more or less. And some people's demons were darker than others. Now, one story I did find on this ProWrestlingStories.com was the story of the Von Erichs. Now, I actually read about them before the movie was announced. I was aware of this story.
Yeah, I mean, the Von Erichs were like the most famous family in wrestling, really, overall. Well, up until like the last 20 years. So, you know, I think anyone who was into the business knew about it. Obviously, people of our age knew Kerry Von Erich in WWF as the Texas Tornado. You know?
He was a renowned mid-carder.
You know, well, until like it all went wrong for him. If I remember correctly, there was a period when the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich, was my brother's favourite wrestler. You know, and we used to do. Did he used to do the Iron Claw to me in the garden? I can't remember. But I remember thinking the Iron Claw was a bit of a silly special move, to be honest with you. But whatever, anyway. But yeah, like I think reading about wrestling in magazines in the 90s, like such as, you know, PWI, Power Slam, whatever, and like there was a heritage that we were all aware of, isn't it? With the Von Erichs, their feuds with the Freebirds and whatever.
Yeah, they were known. They were established in the Indies.
Yeah, so it was just like a famous name that everyone knew. If I remember correctly, the Texas Tornado / Kerry Von Erich, he was billed as a Von Erich in WWF, which was quite a rare thing, right? Because usually
they rarely let you keep your name, do they?
Exactly. Well, they gave him a name, but like they also enabled you to know that it was Kerry Von Erich and that he was a veteran and that he wasn't coming in green and that he was like, you know.
Yeah, from the Von Erich family. Yeah.
He commanded respect immediately.
Yeah.
You know. So
to be fair, there was a small portion of their audience that probably were aware of who he was before he got to the WWF. Because he was known on the outer circuits and stuff like that. I mean, they were the head of, like, they were the.
Well, I've got something. I don't know if you know this, right? Because I suppose we're just getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Because I thought that would come up when we were talking about the film, to be honest with you. But do you know how many people watched him like beat Ric Flair for the title? I actually found the numbers.
No, how many?
50,000 people in the arena watched that match. It's not small. That's not small, is it?
Quite an event for an indie.
Small. So, just going to say to you before we get into the film is that straight up, what a big they gloss over a lot in that film to keep it small, I think, and that Kerry Von Erich's popularity was massively understated in the film, massively understated because he was huge. You know, he came. I watched some matches of Kerry Von Erich in the run-up to this episode in WWF. I watched him tag team with the Ultimate Warrior. Obviously, they were the Tassel brothers, tassels on their boots, against Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect. What a great tag team that is in itself. And Von Erich feuded with Mr. Perfect over the IC title, the Intercontinental, for a while. Anyway, what I'm saying to you is that obviously when the Ultimate Warrior comes down, he gets like the biggest pop out of all of them. The crowd go insane. Okay. This is the Warrior. He was massive. This is when he was world champion as well. But when Kerry Von Erich came down, girls were screaming.
Yeah.
They were screaming for him. People were screaming for him. People were in love with him. And this wasn't like this clip I watched, right? Isn't from the WWE network where they are known to meddle with crowd noise volume and whatnot and add crowd noise. This was
the raw deal, yeah.
A raw VHS with terrible sound clip, like put onto YouTube. People loved him. So I think that their popularity individually and as a whole was like kind of underestimated, intentionally not, shown in the film. So slight correction for you there, but
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I'm just going to run down the cast first, just to sort of just give a description of some of the actors we've got here. Then I'm just going to go through the plot beats, just maybe jumping in every now and again to give some observations or opinions
Yeah,
on
let's
certain
go.
scenes. But
Let's do it.
then we'll give our full analysis of the movie as a whole. So, firstly, to describe the Von Erich family, we lead with Holt McCallany playing as Fritz Von Erich, the father of the family, the patriarch. Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich. Jeremy Allen White.
What? Yep. So I just have to say, what a transformation!
Holy fucking shit, man! Yeah,
Zac Efron, like what a transformation! He looks, to be honest with you, he looks bigger than bloody Kevin Von Erich was. He looked huge.
This guy has gone through a Christian Bale style transformation for this role. He is, and it's crazy. I mean, I'm seeing sort of like Patterson vibes off this guy now, in terms of the fact of a guy that can embrace a role and just disappear into it.
Yeah.
So this is one to keep your eye on for the future. I think he's going to impress over the next couple of years. Next one was actually one that I mentioned to you in a TV show that I was watching not too long ago.
The Bear, isn't it?
That's right. Jeremy Allen White as Kerry Von Erich.
Yeah.
Also, a transformation in him as well. He is a lot more beefy than he was in The Bear.
Yeah.
Now we've got Harris Dickinson playing David Von Erich. Stanley Simmons as Mike Von Erich. Maura Tierney as Doris Von Erich.
Do you know where she's from?
I recognise, but I couldn't place.
ER and Liar Liar.
Ah, there it is. Yeah. More so Liar Liar. There it is.
Yeah. I remember from ER because I used to watch it. But anyway.
And Lily James playing Pam Atkinson. So we start in 1979 with Fritz as the patriarch and the owner of WCCW, which is World Class Championship Wrestling. And his dream has always been of holding the NWA Championship, which I believe he feuded with Harley Race for. But he never got a chance to achieve his dream.
WCCW is like a subsidiary of the NWA Association, isn't it? The NWA sort of represented like a larger corporation, so to speak.
It was an alliance of different.
Of different. They called them. They used to be called territories, didn't they? And so you had different areas of America would be represented as a territory with its own wrestling federation and its own homegrown talent or bought-in talent, depending on how you look at it. Kind of like football teams, I suppose you could say.
Exactly.
But anyway,
everyone in each state, or there was usually a renowned federation or like organization that was responsible for the wrestlers in that area. Now, as he's grown older, Fritz has given birth to 5 sons in storyline. We'll get to that a little bit later.
Yes.
But the eldest, Jack Jr., actually died at the age of 7. And as his other sons have grown older, he's tried to inflict his passion and his belief and his drive on them to follow in his footsteps. Now, Kevin and David have both embraced this wholeheartedly, and they've become wrestlers, whilst Kerry is actually going for the Olympics as a discus thrower. Whilst his youngest, Mike, is a little bit off to one side. He actually prefers music. He wants to be a musician, and he's aspiring to go into that as a career at some point, despite the issues that's bringing up with his father. Now, as the story progresses, Kevin actually earns himself a title shot through disqualification with a chance to fight Ric Flair for the title.
This, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, obviously one of the most famous wrestlers from the NWA period, isn't he? He would eventually go on to be, because NWA sort of transformed into WCW, if I remember correctly, right? Which was like the main...
Yeah, it was an evolution. That's correct.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it? And then so he would go on. He was like the main heel / he was like... He was the company, but he was a heel, really, wasn't he?
But he was one of those characters that lived and breathed his character. He never dropped the character. He was always 24/7 wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say that, Aaron Dean Eisenberg there absolutely knocked it out of the park as Flair in this.
I don't know. The thing is, I don't think anyone could have portrayed Flair.
I agree with you that there is only one Ric Flair. Yes.
There is an energy that he has, which this character. I mean, you could see him emulating it.
I liked him. I mean,
don't get me wrong. It's a guy playing Ric Flair. It's always going to be fun. But
I thought he was really good, personally. But
I don't think the thing is, I don't think anybody could have done it.
no, you are right. You are right. You are right.
I mean, you remember back in the day when Flair used to throw his jacket on the floor and start elbow dropping it over and over again.
Just in general, man. We'll be talking about Ric Flair later. I'm pretty sure he's going to come up in the second part of this episode.
He is
one of the all-time greats. I don't know what the state is. Long story short, but at least until a certain point, he had the record for having a world championship for the most amount of times in his career. I don't know if anyone's ever taken it yet, and if you ask me, I don't think anyone should. Did John Cena get close, or did he overtake it?
I think he might have overtaken it, but not only by 1 or 2.
Yeah, if you ask me, that should always have been Flair's, in my opinion.
Yeah, something like 20 or 22 times or something insane like that. Yeah. But as a result of this, it then shoots to the backstage, and you actually see Fritz laying into Kevin for the fact that he delayed in getting up after taking a suplex onto the concrete. And you can see Kevin saying, well, it hurt. But his father's like, you power through it. You get on with it. But at the same time, during that sequence, Kevin choked, and his brother, David, stepped up to the mark and actually ends up being praised for the fact that he has actually really good mic skills. He shoots a promo in the ring, saving his brother from a potential embarrassment.
Yeah.
And in this moment, you see it's not resentment, it's not jealousy, but you see a certain element of something between them, discord, for want of a better term. Even though these brothers love each other, and there is no single doubt in your mind from the first moment you see these brothers on screen, they fucking love each other. And there's something really beautiful about that, and just seeing that even though these kids come from a family where their father has inflicted this kind of ordeal on them, they are so close. And this gets emulated further when Kerry comes home because of the 1980s Olympic boycott. Because he's no longer able to perform in the Olympics, he comes back to his family. He almost apologetically, I felt, and decides that he's going to get into wrestling and start wrestling with his brothers. Which leads to the 3 Von Erichs, and you see that golden era for them when they're wrestling as the Von Erichs versus the likes of the Freebirds, where there used to be trios wrestling. It's also got that awesome Rush song. Is it Tom Sawyer?
It is, yes. It is a classic.
That is a fucking brilliant song, and it's a song they used, and I believe that Kevin actually used the line from one of the songs of the Modern Day Warrior, or the Modern Age Warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at this point, Kevin and Pam get married. Pam Atkinson being his girlfriend up to this point, and becoming his wife. And you get a very lovely scene with all 4 of the brothers just dancing, or line dancing at the wedding. And this is the thing about this movie, is there's certain scenes where you just see the 4 of them together, and they're not even doing anything that's really even like poignant or deep or anything. You just see them being around each other, and they really nail it. It's just I really enjoyed that element of this movie. Now, at this point, David is due to actually have a title shot against Flair because of his success on the mic. He's taken it from Kevin. But a week before the shot, whilst touring in Japan, he dies from enteritis. It's a sudden and shocking event that absolutely crushes the family, because he is their highest flying star up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
And to this end, Fritz decides he's going to flip a coin to decide which of the other 2 brothers is going to take the title shot, whether it be Kerry or Kevin. Kerry wins the coin toss and wins the title from Ric Flair. But he's still depressed. He's still dealing with the fact that his brother's dead. And not long after, despite being the champion, he goes out after drinking and gets on his motorcycle. And I'll say this, the movie did this well. It didn't lean into the accident itself. It just showed the aftermath.
Yeah.
That moment in the kitchen where he kind of comes out and you realise he no longer has his right foot.
Mm-hmm. That's awful. I mean, if you know the story, then you know what the sequence when he's, on the motorcycle means. And then when the camera comes out, you just know what's going to happen. And they delay it and they delay it. When it happens, it's horrible. It's horrible. It's so awful. So awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your heart goes out to him because this is clearly a man that's still hurting. He's not just physically wounded, he's emotionally wounded, and he still doesn't know how to process it. Now, in the meantime, Fritz starts pushing for Mike, the youngest son, the musician, to start wrestling with the family. And Mike doesn't have the physique. He doesn't have the abilities of his brothers. He doesn't want to be there.
No.
But Kevin endeavors to train him anyway. Because he just wants to make his dad happy. And this unfortunately leads to a sequence of events where Mike gets injured in the ring. He actually takes an injury to the shoulder. And he gets a rare form of toxic shock syndrome, which normally affects women, but can, in rare cases, affect men. That leads to him slipping into a coma and sustaining brain damage. Which, when he recovers, he can't play guitar. They're in a press release afterwards where they're pushing for the fact that he's fine, he's okay. He's slurring his words, his eyes are glassy, and he's not all there anymore. Now, Fritz continues to push Mike, believing that he's still got what it takes. He can still be a wrestler. And in response, Mike kills himself. He takes an overdose. Now, after this is all said and done, Kevin is the one that steps up to fight Flair. And during the match, he actually gets disqualified for applying the Iron Claw for far too long. Now, I don't know if this is, as the movie read it, as him being over the top, or if it was something that's scripted for the story. I genuinely don't know.
So I looked this up, and it actually happened. Like, really? Whether it was scripted or not, it looked like it was. It looked like it was kayfabe to me personally. Yeah. I watched the actual match with Kevin holding the Iron Claw onto Flair and Flair going, ah! And then their dad coming in and breaking it up.
Because at the end of the day, the Iron Claw, as much as it's a submission that's held in high regard, it is not a debilitating move on that sort of level. It's not.
Yeah. It looked kayfabe to me. It didn't look snug, as they say. So.
So, after this, Kerry decides he's going to try and return to wrestling using a prosthetic foot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is something that people weren't even aware of this at the time. They didn't know that he'd lost his foot.
So, basically, like as I said, as I mentioned earlier on, it's a critique, but it's a very minor critique personally, because this film that is 2 hours and 15 minutes is trying to encapsulate 20 to 30 years of life, near enough. 20 years of life, isn't it? And so things are going to get glossed over. Things are going to be forgotten. I know you were alluding to something that was completely removed earlier on, which I'm sure will come up. We'll discuss later. But this sequence you're talking about now is kind of a bit misplaced because I think when he actually has that motorcycle accident, it's not on the night of him winning the championship.
Despite how the movie
it's right. It's actually later when that happens. And it is, in fact, true that no one knew about it. No one. I found an interview with Rowdy Roddy Piper, R.I.P., and where he apparently was a very good friend of Kerry Von Erichs, and said that I was a good enough friend that sometimes in hotels, because we used to travel together, he would sit and chat with me without his prosthetic foot. But no one else, in general, it was a closely guarded secret. I don't think Vince McMahon knew. I don't think Pat Patterson knew. I don't think his opponents knew, or if they did, or thought something's dodgy there, they didn't say anything.
No, and to his absolute fucking credit, you never noticed him make a misstep or anything. I mean, this is a man who was wrestling for a reasonable period of time with one foot.
As kids watching it, we had no idea. No one did. No one knew.
I mean, he became for a short period of time, became the Intercontinental Champion.
He was huge. He was world champion in other federations.
Yeah.
He was like a humongous star. That's something that the film kind of downplays and doesn't really like. I said earlier, doesn't really bring to the fore of the tone of the movie. I get the impression that it downplays a lot of this because another thing as well. I just didn't want to interrupt you because you were like really, really going for it.
That's okay.
David Von Erich, when he dies, it seems quite sudden, but in actual fact, he actually was on that tour in Japan for quite a while. He had a full program with Flair before that happened suddenly. So it seems like the way the film tells the story, you're going to be on a program with Flair, you're going to Japan, he goes to Japan and dies. But that didn't actually happen. A certain amount of time passed, and he actually, did get to wrestle a lot and was beloved and was very successful. They all were. They all, obviously, everyone except for, I believe, the youngest brother, But, so, yeah, I don't know, it's hard. When it's a biopic in the end.
Yeah,
when
and choices were made for narration.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, when I was watching the film, as someone who, I don't want to call myself a smart fan because I hate that term, but I guess that is what you would call me. I know how wrestling works, although I'd never admit that to a wrestler because most wrestlers will never tell you that you do because, it's rude, I think, to say that you know how it works because I'm not in that ring busting my balls. I'm not doing those. It's a very dangerous thing to do, and I have great respect for the guys that do it. But anyway, I have a rough idea of how the sport works. I have a rough idea of how everything works. And as I was watching the film, I felt like the film was glossing over certain aspects of the business to focus more on the characterization of Kevin, the main character. It's like everyone's,
Well, this
Terry.
is the thing, is that this movie...
No, it's Kevin.
Yeah. This movie, you can initially you get the impression this is a wrestling movie, but it's not.
No,
it's a character drama.
That's correct, yes.
And
definitely.
It just so happens that these characters wrestle.
Yes.
It's just, you don't get into plot lines of them in the ring or anything like that. No. It's not about that. This is about...
You get a few nuggets, don't you? You get nuggets of information, like when they're when they're in the tag teams and they sort of like talk. With Abdullah the Butcher, they're talking briefly about I'm going to do this briefly. You get nuggets of it here and there, but yeah, definitely.
Now, with Kerry sort of becoming successful, like truly world level successful for the first time in his life, Kevin has been somewhat forgotten in the rush.
Mm-hmm.
And Fritz gives him WCCW to run. Now, at one point, the remaining boys do start to come back to the family. And when Kerry returns, he gives Fritz a gun. And out of nowhere, becomes annoyed that he won't shoot it with him. It's the strangest reaction. He's almost manic in that he wants to shoot with his dad.
I think it is a very subtle... showing, let's say, inference of his drug problems.
Yeah.
He was, because of his foot, he was addicted to painkillers at the time.
Yeah, I did.
And I imagine, like, that's something that the film does downplay. Like, supposedly, before he even joined, Bret Hart said this in an interview, supposedly, before he even joined the WWF, Kerry was known as an addict. And then you have the fact that he was wrestling without a foot. I don't know if you saw this, but supposedly the reason why the foot was amputated in the first place was because after an initial operation, he tried to walk too quickly and he fucked it up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like, signs of a man, like, just desperate.
Wanted to. I'm going to get into that point in a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like as we were sort of briefly mentioning earlier on about how like wrestlers, all since forever up until probably nowadays, hopefully it's changed, lived very, very difficult lives.
Well, you weren't allowed to be in pain or be injured.
No,
you weren't got on with the show. So
that's right. Exactly. You didn't take time off. If you took time off, you risked losing.
Yeah, you weren't getting paid. You lost your momentum.
Exactly. And then you travel across the country, in a car that you had to pay for, the petrol that you had to pay for. Only the top wrestlers had their hotels paid for. All the other wrestlers, had to pay for their own accommodation. It was a
I
very,
still
very
remember reading stories of Mick Foley going like 3-4 hour car journeys just for
yes,
$50 and a peanut butter sandwich.
yes, yes.
Because at that time in his career, all it was you put your name out there, you get known. This isn't a job yet. You're still in the whole kind of hiring business.
Oh, it's horrible, really, when you think about it. So I mean, nowadays, hopefully, it's a lot better. I hope it is better for everyone nowadays.
You'd like to hope
Because
so, yeah.
because obviously these guys were putting themselves through hell as well. Not just like the traveling, but like as this is a job that tested them to like physical limits. You watch them in the ring, and like ignorant people go, yeah, it's fake, and it's like, it might be fake in terms of like the results, but it's not fake in terms of the pain.
Yeah, they are putting themselves through it. Yeah.
And you can imagine like damaging your body every night, going back to a hotel in a completely strange place, not your home, not your partner to look after you, your family to be around you, And then this is obviously on the world stage. This is WWF at this point. So, regarding like WCCW, where the Von Erichs, which was the Von Erichs family business, a territory, they put shows on in their territory. WWF was a traveling show, wasn't it? They do house shows across the country. So you were forced to travel everywhere. And then you were like damaging your body doing these death-defying moves, every other night of the week, getting in the car. Oh, my back hurts a little bit. I've got to perform tomorrow. In come the pain pills. Oh, it happens again. In come the pain pills. Oh, if Kerry has only got one fucking foot, man.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't help but feel,
sympathy.
Feel for them. Yeah. It's just incredible, really.
It's a thankless lifestyle.
Yeah, I say was then. Hopefully not now. But it wasn't thankless. They did it because they loved it. They did it because they were so passionate about it. They did it because the fans.
But the fans didn't realise what it is they were going through behind the scenes.
No, I think that goes in with what you were saying earlier on about how it's like, it's so interesting now being older because you didn't know when you were younger. You just like assumed stuff.
I saw the characters they were playing, but now I endeavour to find out the people they are behind it.
It makes you respect them even more.
Yeah,
I mean that's part of it. But going back to that sequence where Kerry he comes to the family holiday, doesn't he? It's Christmas. Sorry, and he goes home to see his family, and he sort of the fact that the rest of the family sort of expect him to be there for Christmas, and Kerry sort of reveals that he's looking to go, and he wants to give his dad his Christmas present and go, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And so like there's like a bit of duology in terms of motive there, isn't there? He's like he's got the gun, he's brought him this nice present. I mean, us English people, I imagine we can't, we don't get that. But like obviously it was very, very important to him that he got his father a gun, and his father would fire it there and then. And like, while I think his father, Fritz, that's his stage name, isn't it? It's hard to say, right?
Do you think different, but he's very kind of dismissive of the present?
Yes, which I think is his way in general. Obviously you don't know what happened in real life at that moment, whether he was dismissive or not, or whether it really was, no, your mum's cooked dinner, let's have dinner, let's not do presents yet. But I also think that Kerry is portrayed as someone at that point who is emotionally unhinged as well.
Oh, he's close to manic at times, and you can see that clearly this is a man that's hurting.
Yes, and like I said, it is like, if you know anything about steroids and you know anything about addiction,
your moods and your emotions,
you can just see. This is why one of the reasons why I think this film is very effective is that it's a very, very emotional film, Mark.
Oh, God,
and many of the emotions that the film portrays are not explicitly dumped down your throat. They are suggested by subtle performances and great writing. I don't want to derail you too much, but there are multiple, like, for me, some of the most powerful moments in this film, and I guess it's a testament to how great an actor Zac Efron is just because, like, he wasn't, I don't feel like, in terms of what I've read, he was the most famous of the brothers, and yet he is, but he's the one that survives, right? And, like, I guess when it comes to, like, adapting this family narrative into a biopic, they saw that he was the through line. You know, he
Yeah.
can be at the beginning and he can be there at the end. So there is an overall arc. So all this stuff, the curse of the Von Erichs, happens around him, and we understand the suffering that this curse puts on the family through him, really, don't we?
Yeah.
And there are so many beautiful scenes through like the stunning cinematography. I love the color palette of this film. Like it had like that dull, like but colorful 70s palette for a lot of it, where it's just him just staring, just thinking.
Oh, his fucking eyes, man.
Oh yeah, his eyes, exactly. His eyes.
I mean, despite the fact you've got this muscle man, it's just his eyes look so vulnerable.
Oh my God, we're just talking about this in the previous episode of Rufus Sale in Dark City. You know, like this is a man who is acting through his eyes, through his expressions, and he's being allowed to embody this character, embody the emotions, embody the motive, the conflict. You know, so fucking powerful.
Yeah,
you know, so fucking powerful. And anyway, this sequence here with Jeremy Allen White as Kerry Von Erich is so subtly done, so beautifully done, because you can just see the desperation. I think something
it's almost like he's hinged his entire relationship with his father on the fact that I'll give him a gun and he'll fire it and everything will be all right.
Well, something that is
in his weird manic mind, sort of like that's how he's put it together.
All the way through this film, Jack Fritz Von Erich, the father, has sort of acted as like the story's antagonist, hasn't he? And he is like basically played them against each other.
No, even down to the rankings, where it's like, we all know that David's Kerry's my favorite, and then there's David, and like you kind of, but we all know the rankings can change.
Yes,
and that is a horrifying thing to say to your children.
This is a father who's so. We'll get to the themes later, but the importance of this scene specifically was that like this also embodied Kerry's need to bond with his father, I think. You know, as well. It's just so much into one scene, so potent and so powerful, you know. It's great. It's great. Very well written and very well acted. So anyway, as you were saying, Mark, my apologies for derailing you there completely.
No, don't apologise in the slightest, man. It's a fantastic analysis. And this scene leads into the downward spiral of Kerry. Now, that night, Kerry calls Kevin and starts to discuss with him the fact that he is starting to have dark thoughts and he's considering suicide. And after the call, Kevin contacts Fritz and begs him to check on Kerry. And the next morning, Kevin arrives at the home and he arrives only just in time to hear the gunshot and runs over to find his brother, Kerry, dead from a gunshot. At which point Fritz arrives as well, and this is where you see Kevin finally snap and finally turn on his patriarch and attack him, screaming at him, "Why didn't you check on him?" And this is when the emotion kicks in. This is when it all starts to well up, man. It's so much.
It's important, isn't it? Because I think that Zac Efron's Kevin Von Erich's part, he sort of represents sanity in this insane world.
He's desperately trying to hold the family together.
Well, he has to make a choice, doesn't he? Like one of the important parts of this story is him choosing his family over the business and whatever. And like earlier on in the narrative, he says that he thinks that his father is being too hard on David Von Erich, doesn't he? He thinks he says it. Even though the other brothers seem to react more emotionally towards their father,
he always is level-headed when it comes to...
Yeah, he seems to be the one who's more aware of the fact that their father is playing them against each other, is manipulating them to be stronger, you know, to be the greatest wrestling family of all time.
But he's at the same time, he keeps the peace. He doesn't compete with his brothers. He just wants... He wants the family to succeed, not him.
Do you know the origins of this scene you're talking about, Mark?
No.
Do you want me to tell you the origins of this scene?
Certainly.
It didn't happen.
Oh.
Yep.
Was he already dead by the time he got there?
No, because his father found him. Kevin didn't find him.
I see.
So, you know, like, this is obviously, like, dramatic, you know, adaptation, let's say, you know. But that's fine, because it's important, isn't it? This is, it's...
It brings the conflict of the father and the son straight into the fore.
This is the importance of, like, Kevin Von Erichs, you know, being the one that recognises it. Their father is the one that's playing them against each other, you know. While, in essence, there isn't really an antagonist in this story. On paper, the dad is the antagonist, and Kevin is the protagonist. And this is the moment when the you know, the protagonist takes on the antagonist. You know, the hero's journey, if you will. And, like, they obviously, like, added this sequence for the sake of, like, you know, dramatic satisfaction.
Yeah.
But another interesting little factoid I found out, Mark, is that so another thing that's played down in this movie is that all the brothers married. All of them had families, not just Kevin. And 2 years before he killed himself, Kerry told Bret, no, it was either Bret Hart or Roddy Piper, one of the two, but I think it might have been Bret, that he had visions of going to be with his brothers. He felt like his death was inevitable and it was coming. And that he would kill himself because he just missed his brothers too much. And what actually twists him over the edge is him being divorced and losing his children. Supposedly, Bret or Roddy, whoever it was, said to him when he originally was saying that I feel like God is telling me that I need to be with my brothers, but your daughters need you more. And Bret, I think it was Bret, felt like he had calmed, let's say, the suicidal storm that was building up inside him. But the divorce was too much, and it was the end. And
it pushed him over the edge.
That's what pushed him over the edge, and then it was his father that found him. So, you know. But, you know, a very dramatically satisfying scene, as you say. Like, it's very, very well acted, and, like, almost like you've been waiting for it, because in this biopic, you know, Fritz has effectively killed all these three brothers. He's killed them, basically. Obviously, like, there's a younger brother who didn't die, who died young, you know, as part of the curse.
Yeah. Chris,
or whoever, yeah. But the three wrestling brothers who die, you know, it is because of the father's pushing. Or the film sort of makes it.
It implies that.
It implies it.
The thing is, I mean, we'll get into this once I've kind of wrapped this up, but I think it's left a touch ambiguous on that level.
Yeah, it's hard to know, really.
But I will say, you saying the term "it's time to be with my brothers" does lead us into the next scene.
Don't. I think this is it. This is where, like,
I mean, you could say this scene's cheesy.
No.
Oh my God! Here come the fucking tears, man.
Pretty much from this moment, I was crying. To the rest of the movie.
I mean, does Kerry put down the coin that decided that he was going to be the champion, and then crosses the river on a boat, and he sees his brothers waiting on the dock on the other side, and he sees Mike with his guitar, he sees David with that world title, and he sees the little brother Jack Jr. that he never got to meet.
Oh man!
And the four of them just embracing. And I've heard criticisms of this scene, but God,
criticism? Who's criticised?
I know some people saying that it's at the end of the day, for a movie that's a biopic and everything, this is very much artistic license and everything.
But there's loads of artistic license in the film.
I know, and I fucking love this scene, man.
Who said this? Who said this? Is it just people on the internet, or is it critics?
It's critics.
No.
This scene, my God!
I'm sorry, but this scene was so beautiful.
Yeah.
One of the things this film really nails is, like, the camaraderie of the brothers. It really does.
Despite their trauma, whether it be through their respective depressions or through family or through their father, they've always held on to each other, and they still love each other. And
I think, like, that's something else that's really important to the father being represented as the antagonist, is that despite the fact that he was horrible to them in this film, and he manipulated these brothers to be competitive with each other, like a drill sergeant, you know, almost like a Nazi drill sergeant. He, like, bred them, to be,
They were to fulfill the dreams that he never had.
That's right. That's the point as well. Yeah. He's like a lot of them were in that situation, though, weren't they? As obviously Kevin Von Erich was supposed to be a football star, but he had an accident at college as well. So that's another part of the curse. And all these things tie together. And as I mentioned to you a minute ago, that in an interview, Bret Hart revealed that Kerry wanted to be with his brothers. I think that this scene of them reuniting in the afterlife, film is a visual medium. It's a fucking visual medium.
Yeah, there didn't even need to be words. I mean, they were kind of the throwaway words. Oh, glad you could make it and stuff like that. The silly stuff that brothers would say to each other. But it was all about that visual.
It was the setting. It was the setting and them together.
Yeah.
It just. Oh, I'm actually getting.
After Godzilla -1, man, I wasn't ready to feel this much this year, man.
I don't know. People turning around and saying that this scene is contrived. Maybe I don't know. I think they're cynical twats, personally.
Sometimes they can be a little. Even in biopics, there can be a little bit of. Yeah.
There's loads of artistic license in this film because the scene, the fact that he chokes his dad out,
none of that happened. Yeah.
That didn't happen. That didn't fucking happen.
But for a family, you want something like this for a family that's been through so much like this.
This is a film. This is not a documentary. This is not a TV series. This is not a load of people just walking around talking in sets. This is a film and the beauty of film is visual storytelling, and this film is doing that with great effectiveness. If it was on the writing table, and the writers, let's have a very quick look. It was written by Sean Durkin, the director, and he's looking at this script, and he's going, I have these two options, and I'm the producer of this film. And he says to me, I've got these two scenes worked out. I've got this scene where all the way through the film, the brothers express in separate scenes to each other emotions about how much they love each other and how much they care for each other. Or I have them all together in the afterlife at the end, welcoming each other in reunion.
Yeah, I know which one I'd fucking pick.
The reunion sequence is more economic. It reduces the runtime because you're doing it in one go.
Yeah,
and it's a payoff as well because
you want to feel that they got some sort of happy ending. I mean,
they're all heavily Christian. They're all heavily fucking Christian as well. So it's even more relevant.
I mean, even as a man who is agnostic,
I'm atheist. I'm atheist.
But nonetheless, the idea that sort of there is something. I can appreciate the desire for that, and
this is why Kerry killed himself. He said that he felt like it was God's plan for him, and that's whether I agree with that or not. That's not the point.
That's exactly.
That sequence of them in the afterlife sort of is reverent to their beliefs as well. It just covers so much in a couple of minutes. And then the reunion with the son, the oldest one as well. Oh, it's just.
Oh yeah, you're my oldest brother talking to a kid that's only 7 or 8 years old, and it's like, oh god, that got me as well.
It's a lot.
Yeah. So much, and I can tell it, man. This made the tears flow a little bit. And then the next scene.
Stop.
Oh god.
No, I don't even know if I can talk about it.
After that, we come to quite possibly the best fucking scene I have ever seen Zac Efron acting. It's just him, just sat on his front garden watching his two sons play. And just seeing how much love his two sons as brothers have for each other. And this fucking breaks him. And he just starts crying. Oh my fucking god, man! I was in shock as to how much this movie was making me feel by this point. I was spellbound.
Manly man tears.
It was, and when his sons come over and they start saying, "Dad, what's wrong?" And it's like, "Oh, I don't have any brothers anymore." And then they were offered to be his brothers. Oh my fucking god! It's like, I was just emotions I didn't even know I had.
It's a bit much.
And even when they're sort of like, he's saying, "Oh, I'm sorry for crying in front of you. I shouldn't be crying." It's like,
Oh, that's horrible. It's so horrible. That's his dad talking. That's
And
his dad
his
talking.
son's just like, "Don't worry, we
Oh,
cry all the time." And
it's so
oh,
beautiful. Because they're like, even though like after everything that's happened,
you realise he hasn't passed the lessons of his father on to his sons. His sons are far better. And
so good. It's so good.
yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah,
so good. It's so good. What a payoff. What a
yeah.
payoff.
That single scene was fucking beautiful, man.
The dull sunlight, the pastel
Yeah,
colours as well that are used throughout the film, like it's like a dream almost. It's so beautiful.
it's a man that's finally coming out of the storm, even though he still hurts for what the storm did to him. And the movie starts around it. He sells his federation to Jerry Jarrett.
And that's against his father's wishes, isn't it? There's
Yeah,
discussion
Fritz
earlier
was
on.
very angry about that. And
Yeah. He's like, there's this like discussion about it. He wants to sell it, but by selling it, it's like Fritz, giving up on his dream, giving up on his heritage.
yeah,
But one of the most important themes in this story, isn't it? It is dreams, aspirations versus family. And Kevin at this point has a family of his own, and their happiness is more important to him than his father's dreams and the former aspirations that he had as a wrestler. Because as he mentions, we live in a flat and it's not enough. And if I sell the Federation, I can provide a home for my family. And his dad's completely against it. And then you find out after this sequence, after the sequence where he chokes his dad out, that he sold it to Jerry Jarrett.
yeah,
And apparently he said that Fritz like threatened Jerry Jarrett over it.
yeah.
Which
Which
again,
is still a hangover. The fact that he still considers his dream more important than the family, than the well-being of the family.
Yeah. It's interesting that it's noted that Fritz's wife, Doris, yeah, she gave up on a career, didn't she? She gave up on her scholarship and everything for the wrestling career as well.
Yeah, you can see this a woman that's kind of sacrificed so much at this point. What's another thing? She kind of she's a very much she gives the impression at first of being a background character, but you realise that she's important as well.
Yeah, she like very much sort of is emblematic of the narrative's main theme, isn't she? It's the sacrifice of family for the for pride, isn't it? It's pride.
Yeah. So it's at this point we roll into the epilogue. Probably still sniffling a little bit from everything that's just happened.
Oh yes.
And we discover that Fritz and Doris, their marriage is damaged beyond repair at this point. And I believe she ended up divorcing him not long after. Whilst Kevin ended up using the funds to purchase a ranch from the sale of the Federation and ended up raising quite a large family. And you get that final picture of him surrounded by his family, of his sons, and daughters, and grandsons, and
loads of them. Love that.
And they were finally, the Von Erich family was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2009, which, for what it's worth, that's a nice touch as well. Holy shit, dude! This movie.
Yes.
This one hurt. This one. It hurt a lot, but I'm so fucking glad I watched it.
Yes, it's a great movie. A great movie.
And
as I meant, sorry, after you.
No, and it's a movie that, as I said, you think you're going in to watch a wrestling movie about the story of a wrestling family, but you're not. This is a story about characters and not necessarily self-destruction, but the effects of toxic masculinity, which I know is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days in modern era. In days of social media and in days of like all sorts of terms and buzzwords where people will accuse people of acting in a certain fashion, but this is what toxic masculinity is.
Yes.
This is a world which teaches men you shouldn't cry.
Yes.
You just brush it off, get up. It doesn't hurt.
Yes.
What are you talking about that you feel sad? Get on with it. And this is what happens with men and women. I'm not for a second saying that this is purely a male problem. I'm just saying that this is 4 brothers that were in an industry which embraces that ethos that says you get on with the job, you do the job, you take some pills, you play the part, and it shows how much it destroyed each and every one of them in different fashions. And that's what's so fucking heartbreaking of it. It's just this is a family that's deep in depression for different reasons, for whether or not they can't achieve what they want, or whether or not they're being forced to achieve something they don't want. And it burns them all in different ways. So that's my take, man. What about you?
I think that's what makes the ending so potent, though, isn't it? It's because Kevin does escape, Bill.
Yeah, and he doesn't pass the lessons on. He breaks the cycle, because this is the kind of upbringing does come from a cycle of father to son sometimes.
Absolutely. I can safely say that I can be, my father was like that, himself, That's one of the reasons I really identified with this movie. He was like quite a hard man, that's for sure, but he definitely attempted to preach that kind of mentality with me, as a kid. I do remember that. But, I've never been like that. I've been too emotional. Ironically, my dad was a very emotional man as well, so that's what was so weird. But anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about. But these themes that this film is touching on is very relatable to all of us, to everyone. As you said, it's not a wrestling movie; it's a character-driven movie. It's a character drama. But I think it is still a wrestling movie. Like the best stories are the stories which has got great characters, great arcs, conflict at the center of it. This film is, as I mentioned, I do feel like certain elements of it are glossed over quickly. Yeah. I think that certain elements of it are glossed over for the sake of the mainstream audience that it needs to have to make money, which is absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned, because it did make money. It made its budget. It doubled it, I believe. Here we go.
15, budget of
15.9, and it made 44 at the box office.
Yeah.
And that's just at the box office, So it did well, which is
for something that isn't a Marvel movie or anything like that.
I mean, it's
a solid,
It's a niche wrestling movie, So it's just that's what great storytelling entails in the grand scheme. I mean, yes, you can watch, you can read your fantasy novels or watch your fantasy series that are about whatever. That's fine. But real hard hitting, beautiful, storytelling in a film such as this is the concept that affects you emotionally and stays with you.
Yeah.
Truth is that it could have been a story about 4 brothers going to the army, and it would have had the same effect. But because it's about the Von Erichs...
Oh, that would have been Saving Private Ryan, wouldn't it?
True. But, because it's about the Von Erichs, and it references
so many... And the fact it's true. I say for true for a certain measure of what truth is, but...
Yeah. And there's all those great references to characters that we loved as kids, There's even shots of, Kerry wrestling with Mr. Perfect, at SummerSlam, when they're watching it on the TV. And, so that makes it, special to us as wrestling fans.
It ties in with an era of my childhood. You didn't realise this was happening.
I do think that the success of the WCCW, the Von Erichs Wrestling Federation, was downplayed in this movie. And I think the success of all of the kids was downplayed in this movie because the film was going for a somber tone overall. And anything too over the top and celebratory would have sort of broken that tone, which is fine. So when I watched it, I felt like I wasn't getting the whole story. I felt like I was getting only a portion of it. But that's because I know wrestling, and I know how big wrestling was in that era. I know a bit about the independents. I know about the Von Erichs, which made me go and do some research, actually read some interviews with wrestlers about wrestlers, because that's where you're going to find the truth. Depending on who's talking. But, and just read about it, watch a few documentaries and whatever, and just, refresh my memory of it all. So yeah, this was a great movie.
It really was.
Yeah, I absolutely adored it.
Um,
And I, and truth is, I would recommend anyone watch it.
Absolutely. I've had
You know.
people that aren't in the least bit interested in wrestling, like where I work. Some of the women I work with have approached me because I've made it. I don't make it a secret that I watch wrestling. I book off time to watch WrestleMania and stuff like that because fuck, where else am I going to fit 12 hours worth of entertainment into my life? And they come up to you and go, Mark, you're into that wrestling stuff, aren't you? I was like, yeah. I wish I go. I watched a movie called Iron Claw recently. Do you know it? It's like, yeah. And they're like, "Oh my god, I know!" And even though these are people that haven't got the slightest bit of interest in wrestling, but
just
they would missions. They kind of go, "I was absolutely crying my eyes out by the end of it," and let's just say this, it hit me in a way I'd never thought of. Like, I mean, because they're kind of like they know like wrestling, scripted, fated, blah blah blah, but they still tell a great. But it doesn't change the fact that it's still a true story. I mean, for want of a measure of true, and it hit them on a level which you don't have to be a wrestling fan to watch this movie.
Mate, good storytelling, good writing, incredible acting across the board, across the fucking board.
Yeah,
everyone, all the brothers, the father, like incredible. Like this, as I said, like any criticisms that I have for this film come from being a wrestling fan and just recognizing that, like, I'm not getting all of it. I mean, this could have been like a 10-episode limited series, I think, and uncovered more of it, and that it would have been just and probably more effective, really. But what we got is a film, and I'm fine with that. This was,
I mean, this was on our radar for a long time. We saw the shots of what Efron had done to himself in order to get into the role, and everyone was fucking astounded. The look that he'd gone for, and he didn't look like that High School Musical sort of like.
Yeah.
Nah, he broke out in a big fucking way.
He pulled off a mean crossbody as well. A mean
crossbody. That was fucking beautiful. I will say this, that Kevin Von Erich, he's actually been interviewed a couple of times since then, since the movie's release, and he's confirmed a couple of things. First of which is that the director actually spoke to him about the narrative choices. He actually said he got on a Zoom meeting with the majority of the remaining Von Erich families, not with Fritz, but with the others, and discussed with him about facts like the exclusion of Chris Von Erich, the brother that shot himself at the age of 21 in 1991.
That's right. There was another brother that died. So
yeah, which at this point I don't think I could have handled another loss, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Kevin actually agreed with him, said that I understand what you're trying to do here, and there are some purists that might say that you should tell the truth, you should tell the whole story. But the director did speak to the family and did confirm with them regarding the narrative choices that they're making in this movie. So to that end, although he did later say, like I believe in a podcast not long after the release of the movie, that he did have some issues with the portrayal of his father.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I do get the impression that like the antagonistic role that the father represents was sort of beefed up a little bit.
Yeah, because he says at the end of the day his father was an honourable and good man.
Yeah.
That's how the words he used to describe him. And that could be just the son describing the father through glasses.
Who knows?
But
who knows? You just don't know. In the end, his father passed away like in the 90s himself, and
so maybe he just wants to. It's like that line from Watchmen: as you get further from the past, it shines all the more brightly.
Yeah, who knows?
And maybe he just wants to remember the good in everyone that was in his family, his brothers and his father included.
No one wants the world to look at their father and think he was an arsehole.
Yeah.
Unless he really was an arsehole. In the end, like, as I said, this goes in line with the choking scene not happening in real life.
Yeah, I feel that was a kind of a vast... I mean, this movie, I mean, did it need an antagonist? Maybe not. Maybe it...
I don't know, because we're wrestling fans.
We want a good guy and a bad guy, and we want someone we can point out and go, boo! And so...
No, okay, let me say that again. I don't want to sound like a pretentious knob when I say this, but I'm gonna say it like it anyway. You and I have watched more than a few films and read a few books in our time.
Yeah.
And we don't need set antagonists and protagonists in our films. This is what we were saying about Sunshine earlier on, about how there's a big bad at the end. You don't need that. The big bad can be an idea. It doesn't have to be a villain who goes, ha, 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 ha.
It could be the circumstance itself rather than
Exactly.
an individual. Yeah.
But for the mainstream, and that's not a criticism, because not everyone is as interested in storytelling as I am or you are, because we do a podcast about it, for starters. So that says we are more interested in it than most people. But for a lot of people, you do need those narrative tropes to communicate the ideas that the film is trying to get across. This film, as we mentioned earlier on, is about the dreams of, pride affecting family and the struggle between pride and family. And I'm okay with a film like this sort of manipulating the truth a little bit by using these narrative tropes to communicate these ideas better. As you said a minute ago, people who are not into wrestling watched this film and cried at the end, and
because these are still people. And
yeah, and while it is not necessarily completely the truth, the heart of the movie is true. If you know what I'm saying, that's what it's about. That's what
Erichs went through.
The themes are true. It is telling you a truthful, honest story at the grand scheme of things, regardless of the. It's like what I said about Hemingway. Hemingway was obsessed with telling the truth of his writing, and that's why he broke down his writing so to the most simplistic levels, trying to find the ultimate honesty, the most plainest, truthful way to communicate an idea to someone through a sentence. And I think that what that actually represents, metaphorically, is the communication of an idea to someone else. And that's getting to the soul of storytelling. And all stories come from real life, no matter how you look at it. This is what I was saying to you in the previous episode when I said to you, when you break down Dark City and The Matrix, they are about the same thing. They are about breaking control. That is breaking down both those movies to the soul of their narratives, basically. Although it's just that Dark City has more, more layers than The Matrix does. And this film, as I said to you, that's what it's about: pride versus family, and pride destroying a family. And it could have been the army, it could have been anything. And that idea is so understandable and relatable that it is truthful. And that's what makes this film so powerful, and that's why it communicates with people on such an effective level, because the story it's telling you is, as I said, it's truthful. It's real because it's happened. Regardless of the fact that what you're watching is based on a true story, and what you're watching that's really somewhat embellished, but the ideas behind it are so relatable and so understandable that you believe it to be true, and that's how come you feel something when you watch it. That's how come you get invested. It's about real human emotions. Yeah, there it is. There it is. That's the.
I think that is the summary.
That's the lecture.
Yeah.
That's the lecture. That's any fantasy story, Lord of the Rings. If you look down to its source, it's about it's a complicated question. We'll do an episode one day, maybe. Who knows? But all the best story. If you cry at the end of a fantasy story, it's because you are invested in these characters and the human element in it. And that is the true part of any story. That is the truth of a story. So, anyway, I need to stop. This idea fascinates me, mate. It's as a writer of fiction myself and a lover of fiction.
The emotional reaction.
Yes, it's always been what my writing has always been about that. My fantasy trilogy, Millennia. Despite the fact that there's all this fantasy nonsense going on, there is a human element at the heart of it, and that's the reason why people who have actually finished this trilogy of mine, not everyone, but I think 3 people have read the whole thing. And 2 of them cried reading it, So that says to me that the human element there is truthful enough for them to recognize, humanity in it and be invested and react to it. And that's what the best stories are. Not everyone's interested in that, though. Obviously, we don't watch Marvel films, do we, for this? I don't anyway. We do like to watch things for escapism. We don't necessarily always want to watch
We don't need the heartstrings plucked on every single.
Exactly. That's why it's about contrast, isn't it? But the greatest art reflects life, and this film reflected life beautifully, and that's all I'm going to say about it. It's a great movie. What can I say? I can't stop talking about it. I only finished watching it today. I only finished watching it today.
I rave about this to everyone I know as well, and whether they're wrestling fans or not, I've been like, this is a movie that I'm not going to say anything other than if you're ready to cry, watch it. So,
was Zac Efron nominated for an Oscar for his performance in this?
I think it may have come out a bit too late for the nominations. I'm not sure.
Jesus Christ!
But
man.
goddamn, does that man deserve it? More than nomination, he deserves a fucking Oscar. You're right. That one scene on the fucking garden where he's just on his sat down crying, man. Like that I've never knew he was capable of stuff like this, man.
Incredible.
Like as you say, every single moment in which, like when he's in the cafe talking to his future wife, and you just see that you can see all the pain that's in his eyes as he talks to her because he's worried, he's scared about what the future holds because he can see all of his brothers hurting. But he's still hopeful that they can still achieve their dreams. And all of that conveyed just through his eyes. It's just, I mean, maybe I'm projecting there. But
no, but that's the beauty of cinema, though.
Yeah,
that's the beauty of real cinema.
And this isn't taking anything away from the other brothers. They are all phenomenal in their own roles. It's just that the camera focuses on him as being the representative of the family.
Well, that's what I said to you. He's the protagonist. He is the through line for the story, That's why I said it's quite, he wasn't the most famous of the brothers, I believe,
but he was the survivor. Yeah,
he's the survivor, and so I'm not. Who knows if the things that he said and the things that he felt were said and felt? Who knows? I imagine it was pretty close, but this is, his journey, his hero's journey through this film, is a window into this narrative as a viewer. He is the person that we identify with, isn't it? His emotions, his reactions. As I said to you earlier on, he's the one that says Dad's too hard on them.
Especially we can when see he's talking to his mother and he's trying to.
Yeah. We can see that, and seeing that he is the one that understands that something is wrong. That enables us to empathize with him. And it makes us, because I imagine most of us are good people watching this film. You're a good person, hopefully. I tried to be a good person. Exactly. And you're watching this, and you can see that what the father is doing is wrong. Fritz is wrong to treat his children like this.
But he is lost in obsession, and
and the fact that Kevin's part in this movie is to recognize that he's being too hard means we can empathize with him.
Yeah, he is just. I mean, the thing is, though, you can almost understand his own justifications for that. He wants the best for his sons, but he thinks that his dream is what is best for his sons.
We've all heard stories about, dads pressuring their sons into doing things.
Because they want to live voraciously through the lives of their children. They want to see their children achieve, because they can live their dreams out through the successes of their kids. It's something that does happen quite a lot.
So again, it's another relatable story, part of the story, another truthful element of this, fictional story. Let's say biopic.
But I'm so glad that at no point do you actually you don't see true resentment between the brothers. They never turn on each other.
It is suggested though.
I mean, when Kevin is sat in that locker room and David gets picked, yes, there is that moment, the flicker on his face where you can see him.
Yeah.
But you see him bite down on it, push it down deep, and just go, "This isn't about David."
Yeah.
And I love that, despite that, they never had to come to blows or anything like that. They never, because that would have hurt my heart a little. I'm going to be honest. That would have hurt me a lot. Just because this is a movie that is about brothers that love each other, and sometimes there's just not enough movies about that. I don't know. This movie made me feel a whole lot of shit that I wasn't prepared to feel, man. As I say, man, you spend the entire of your life sort of seeking out the lights of movies like The Matrix and shit like that, and then suddenly you hit 40 and your emotions kick in. Where the fuck did they come from? Nonetheless, best movie ever, 10 out of 10. To Wayne Fraser from Sunday movies.
Did they review it?
Don't know, but I imagine that would probably be the line. Actually, yeah, I think they did. Yeah,
I haven't seen it. Yep. Well, I think we should probably wrap that up then, man. I think we pretty much said everything we need to say.
Yeah, I don't think I can say any more without really starting to get into sort of like some real blubbing. Long and short of it, the next segment is going to be a shitload more upbeat.
Yes.
So,
let's go to it, mate.
Yeah, let's go to it, man. Let's move on from this. We're not meant to feel things like this.
Be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. So, Mark, we've been discussing doing this little section for a while. I suppose you could call it indulgence. What do you think?
It's the thing about wrestling is it's something that's been in both of our hearts since we were a very young age.
Mm-hmm,
and if we're going to start talking about stories and storytelling and narrative, this is a medium that we've both been aware of and have appreciated for a long time.
When I was younger and watching wrestling, I would maybe even say up until my mid-20s, who knows? I mean, as mentioned previously, you know, a wrestling fan who is more aware of how wrestling works is generally accepted to be, or generally regarded as a smart fan. So I do liken myself as a smart fan. And being a smarter fan, and we're all smarter now because of the amount of wrestlers that have come out of the closet to talk about the business and whatever. You know, I have acquired a better appreciation for the great storytellers rather than the great characters, I would say, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You know, even today, whatever federation you're watching, the fans will let the wrestlers know if they're bored. You know, which is quite sad, really. But yeah. It's interesting. I, with you and your top 10, I kind of have got. I'm wondering about it.
I think both of our lists are going to be born out of the eras that we were most drawn to.
Yes. It would be no spoiler to say that. Yeah. I'm just wondering. I don't know. We'll see. I'm interested to see how it's going to go. So I'll run down the format quickly. So we're going to do an alternating turn-taking scenario. I'm going to flip a coin, and the person who guesses correctly will go first. And then if Mark reveals his number and we have the same choice, but the other podcaster has the said choice at a higher position, then we will talk about said entry at that higher position. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we're going to do 10 to 5, I would say, or 10 to 6. We'll see how we go. Take a break, and then we'll run down the last few until number 2, a few honourable mentions, and then finally our number 1s. So that's it, really. Let's just see how it goes. Okay, mate. So I'm going to flip the coin. Obviously, as always, imagine the clinking sound that he will not make. And Mark, if you would like to call it. And don't worry, there is no gun to your head when I say call it.
I'll take heads, yeah.
It's tails. Okay, so that's me first. Okay, Mark. So, for the sake of time, I have got a few notes, but for some of these wrestlers, for all of them, I've sort of mentioned a couple of matches, and you know, striking that balance between character and worker, personality and worker, you know, whether they veer more to the other side, what sort of area I'm sort of favouring, I suppose I'd leave it up to you. But as I said, I am mentioning a few matches per entry, but I will definitely tell you now that some entries have got more matches than others, and obviously.
Yeah.
This was difficult. This was very, very difficult. I would probably say that my top 3 were easy, and then it was everyone else. I reckon I had a short list of 20 probably overall. And even now, as I'm reading this number, I'm not sure whether they should have been higher or they should have been someone else. But I do know they do deserve to be mentioned in this podcast. So that is, of course, Diamond Dallas Page is my 10th favorite wrestler of all time, Mark.
He's not in my list, but he was someone I was going to mention later.
Yeah, very difficult. This is a guy who started off as a manager and was told he couldn't do it. He could never do it. And he just, through just sheer force of will and hard work, broke his way into WCW. And if I remember correctly, you could probably say he became the People's Champion before The Rock did.
Yeah, it could easily be argued that. The man had as much, if not more, passion for the industry than just about anyone else on television at the time.
Mm-hmm. You know, there was the fans chose him, didn't they? A very early example of that. You know,
they used to call him the hardest working man in wrestling at one point, didn't they?
I'll say, like, this is, as we mentioned in a previous segment, certain wrestlers who would, work their matches on the fly and others who would meticulously plan. This is someone who meticulously planned their matches. You know, if anything, this man needs to be mentioned for one match and one alone. One of the few wrestlers, Mark, tell me if I'm wrong, if there's anyone who comes close, one of the few wrestlers to get a good match at a Goldberg.
Ha!
Can you argue with that?
I was thinking if there's anyone else that's ever had a match like that. I think Regal had some fun with him, but I don't think.
But Regal embarrassed him and got fired. Incidentally, Regal nearly, well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Nearly gave a spoiler away there. Regal embarrassed Goldberg and then nearly got fired. That's very different.
With shoot match, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas DDP gave him a short but well thought out, well planned match where they both looked strong. You know, he also had a great match with Randy Savage. Imagine them two having a match. You know, incredible. And then obviously he had some great matches with Sting in the latter half of his career when he was a heel. So let's just mention this right now, right? DDP, who came out to some weird fucking remix, as often was the case, of Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana.
Yeah, it introduced us to that, wouldn't it?
That's right. I'm not sure.
No, I do remember you coming and playing sort of like Smells Like Teen Spirit to me, and it's like, it's DDP's theme.
Wow,
and that's when we realised,
was we that young? Was we that young?
Yeah.
Bloody hell. But just to cap off DDP, two more points to cap him off. His gimmick was just phenomenal. Obviously, he had that look, but he had the self high five, which was the symbol for the diamond cutter, and obviously the self high five, the two hands together formed the diamond, which was Diamond Dallas Page, and then the diamond cutter itself, which obviously has been copied since, was a great finisher because it would come from anywhere and he could do it to anyone, and he would do it off the turnbuckle, he would do it around the back, he would do it from reverse any move into it, you know.
He's actually been quoted as saying he's got one for every week of the year.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that hilarious notion because it's like the feel the bang, isn't it? And that's kind of what the diamond cutter is. It's like an explosive, sudden special move. And again, that quotable line, feel the bang, when he used to do the self high five bang and nearly knock himself out every single time. He was like an incredibly charismatic, incredibly funny character as well, because he was almost like kind of mad and almost kind of not there and almost ready to snap at any time, but also like charismatic, and just, you know, loads of his entrances involved him walking through the crowd, you know, pointing to the rafters, pointing to the fans. Obviously, for me personally, he had the most attractive ballet in the history of wrestling. His real wife, Kimberly Page. She was something else. She was something else. You remember my obsession?
Puberty, wasn't she?
Oh my God, yeah, she was definitely up there for me. So, but yeah, this guy was just like the complete package, and I just can't believe when he became champion. Not only did they turn him heel, he cut his hair off. What the fuck? And then his attempts to like make it in WWF/WWE.
Oh, they hamstrung the guy.
They ruined him. They completely ruined him. Thankfully, he found like a second chance in his development of his special yoga program, which he used to educate other wrestlers who were ill or, you know, had bad broken bodies, and they were able to follow the DDP yoga program and basically either be able to work again. There's quite a few famous ones out there if you want to look, or just live a normal life, you know. So all around, like DDP, a super hardworking guy, super charismatic, and just great fun on the mic. You love me, you hate me, but you can't wait to beat me or something. I can't remember. I should look that up.
You'll never forget me.
You'll never forget me. That's it. So yeah, DDP. So a fantastic all-rounder as far as I'm concerned, and like a real missed opportunity for WWF. I can't believe they fucked that up. I can't believe it. He had a great feud with Booker T at one point at the back end of WCW as well, who are both like up and coming, like world champions in the making in WCW. Both could have been world champions in WWF. Idiots. So anyway, that's my number 10, Mark. Going down his page. What's your number 10?
Mine's going to be a little bit of a polar opposite to yours.
Okay.
Now, just what I will say with regards to this list. This is a list that can change on a daily basis. It depends how I feel at the time when I've rewritten this. For sure. So,
as I said, my top 3, I think, is set in stone. But everyone else, it could have been any of the other 10.
You hear my list and go, "Oh, haven't you forgot about so and so?" And I'll be like, "Yes, for fuck's sake, yes, I forgot about so and so," because there's so many people to choose from. Because there are so many fantastic wrestlers out there. But my number 10 is the Iceman, Dean Malenko. Now, this is a man that is the opposite of DDP.
I was very, very, very close with him. He was in my top 10, and then he got edged out more and more and more and more. And then I wanted to put him in my honorable mentions, but there was a few others that I just can't. I'm sorry, but yeah.
Thing is, he is technically one of the most sound people that comes from our era of WCW. Like, the man was the man of 1,000 holds.
Yes, of course.
Only surpassed by one other who may come up later.
Yes.
So, and despite the fact that he wasn't very good on the mic, I'll give you that credit on that one. He was known to be very quiet. I think it's probably the best term you could use for him. But his abilities in the ring,
ice cold, maybe,
which they say is a total contrast to what he was like behind the scenes.
Yes.
Apparently, he was one of the biggest ribbers in the industry, and he was known for laughing and cackling. But none of that ever came out on the camera, which I always thought was a bit unfortunate. I would have liked to have seen some of that come out. But one of my favourite matches for him is from the early days of WCW when him and Jericho got into a feud. And Jericho beat him and sent him on his way. And Jericho challenged the entirety of the Cruiserweight division, telling them that if they wanted to fight him, they had to have a battle royale. At which point there was the introduction of a new Lucha Libre wrestler called Cyclope, who had a full bodysuit complete with mask and everything. Now, enough time had passed that people didn't put 2 and 2 together on this one, and the way Cyclope was wrestling wasn't like anything like Dean Malenko wrestled. It was very cartwheels and rolls and things like that. And Cyclope eventually won the Battle Royale, at which point, just as Jericho came out to give him his title shot, he pulled off his mask to reveal Dean Malenko. And they say that the pop was insane. Like,
yeah.
It was unexpectedly large. I mean, for what is essentially just a mid-card feud, the crowd ate it
was
up.
Let's be honest, it was anything but a mid-card feud because of Chris Jericho's creativity, but also because of noting this entry, Dean Malenko's willingness to let Chris Jericho absolutely abuse the fuck out of him. You know, like Chris Jericho, like character assassinated him on a weekly basis. He character assassinated his family. He even started criticizing his dad's funeral, who died recently. And Malenko's do it. You got to do it. And like,
Malenko comes from a renowned wrestling family and went on to become a trainer actually with WWE for a while.
Was he not a booker as well at some point in WWE?
I believe so as well. Yeah, I mean, he is a wealth of knowledge, and you can see why you wouldn't just sort of let a talent like that, even if he isn't able to perform on the same level. The amount of knowledge that man carried was insane.
One thing I'll say about Dean Malenko is he had one of the most unique and interesting drop kicks.
Yeah.
The way he sort of used to just hang in the air.
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, you
know what
jump
I mean?
Up and then turn sideways. And
the way his legs sort of went in the air, it was unique to him. If you were playing like a wrestling game from the era, and you created a wrestler and had that drop kick, you'd know someone would look at it and go, "That's a Dean Malenko drop kick." There's something really interesting about the way he used to do it.
And the Texas Cloverleaf was a fantastic finish.
Yeah, it's a great finisher. Yeah.
But that's my number 10, man.
Number 10, yeah. A worthy number 10. Well, Mark, I'm wondering what your number 9 is going to be, because going from the Iceman, we're now going to go to the Lionheart. Number 9 is Chris Jericho for me.
I've got him higher, man.
Okay. What's your number 8?
Number 9, you mean?
Sorry, your number 9.
Yeah. Bryan Danielson.
Okay, not on my list.
I love Bryan Danielson, man.
I do like him a lot, but
I love him for what he achieved.
Yes, absolutely. He was in my like definite the top 20 for definite for a long time. So.
I mean, this is a man that on paper, during an era when Vince McMahon was booking, managed to get a WrestleMania rewritten.
Yeah.
Because he, on every metric, doesn't fit what would be a world champion. Hell, they even dragged it into the storyline itself and referred to him as the B+ superstar.
Mm-hmm.
And that he's vegan, he's skinny, he's small, he's everything they don't want in a wrestler, and he still managed to achieve it through pure charisma alone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he can
great work.
The man is a worker. Like
I think really, while he was charismatic, as I was just mentioning about the smart era, where fans will let you know whether or not wrestlers are working hard enough, and this was someone who always worked hard enough, And I think that when WWE was still sort of pushing this mentality of like, even now, even up until the last few years, where it's starting to change again, as of 2024, this big man only mentality, it's been so stupid since like the 80s. It's like this sideshow circus mentality of only having
a lot of beef.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact is that like the expectations of wrestling has gotten higher and higher and higher and higher. People expect more and more and more because technical wrestling improved over time.
Mm-hmm.
And when these other wrestlers who are not working as hard as Bryan Danielson, are getting the pushes, the crowd are gonna, they want to see the hardest workers, getting their dues, and absolutely deserved every single accolade.
Credit to Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton for all sort of like stepping aside, and rather than trying to go against the wishes of the fans, they actually helped elevate him to a historic WrestleMania.
I think they had to.
Oh, the crowd.
They had to. They had to. It was insane. It was insane.
Do you know that because of that, the fans booed Rey Mysterio?
Yeah, insanity.
Because of that Royal Rumble, because they all thought he was coming out at number 30 to get the title shot, and when he didn't come out, Rey Mysterio came out at number 30, and the crowd booed Rey Mysterio.
Imagine booing Rey Mysterio Jr. That's how incredibly popular this man was.
Yeah, it was insane. I remember watching during that era, and I think it was leading into WrestleMania 30, wasn't it? And yeah, just insane times. And he has proven time and time again that he can put the work in. He's right now, he's in his final year. He's actually confirmed that he's in the middle of his final year. He plans to retire because he wants to spend time with his family. But he then followed up with, I'm going to make this the best year of my career. And so far, he is fucking going for it. So, respect to the man. Especially for someone who thought his career was over as well. He dropped out.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was a wrestling fairy tale right there. So, number 9, Bryan Danielson.
Excellent choice, Mark. So number 8 for me. See if I like to lead up a little bit. So I would say potentially the face of ECW, the greatest frog splash in the history of the business, as far as I'm concerned.
Wonder who that could be.
It's RVD. It's Rob Van Dam. Given the nickname because he looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme. This man and his like stoner personality, fine, but just literally bled charisma. Just so charismatic, wasn't he? Even though like his promos like, just nonchalant, relaxed, chill, and that. But it sort of fitted the mentality of ECW. Of course, ECW liked the Philadelphia crowds, liked their intense, over the top, characters like Sandman, Taz, Sabu, obviously. But RVD sort of had his own shtick in that era.
The whole fucking show. And...
Yeah, that's because he put on great matches every fucking time, though, man. The thing is, this man was a worker no matter what you put him in. I mean, any tag team match with Sabu, the feud with Sabu, any bloody match. I mean, this is not even talk about the Jerry Lynn series.
Oh, Jesus my fucking God. Yeah, I was going to make sure you fucking mentioned that.
Jesus fucking Christ. They even brought it back in his run in TNA. Like, Jesus Christ.
I even love the progressive storytelling in their matches where they have sequences where they extend the sequence by 2 moves. every time they run it through, just to show the two of them are constantly learning new counters to each other.
Absolutely, which is what we're talking about with, well, we're supposed to talk about with narrative and wrestling, about how stories are told in the ring itself through, the ebb and flow and the ups and downs and the pressure and the pain that they are pretending to put themselves through, and reacting to the crowd all at the same time. Also, like, he sort of did like mixed martial arts with some body slams and, the high flying moves. So he had, as I mentioned, like the 5-star frog splash, obviously one of the greatest frog splashes out there. Really, there's something about the way he used to just like flex in the air that just looks so incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of wrestlers have had the frog splash, but his looked like it fucking hurt.
It looked like it hurt him as well. He sold it. He sold his own frog splash so well.
Because he let himself bounce. It actually
it's so good.
Yeah,
so
it looked good. Yeah.
The Van Daminator, which was where he'd throw a chair into your face, then jump and roundhouse kick it. The Van Terminator, where he'd do it from one end of the fucking ring to the other on a turnbuckle. Obviously, certain wrestlers have copied that since, or non wrestlers, but they didn't have the charisma, they didn't have the workload. And also, let's be honest, this man used to come out to Walk by Pantera in an era where Walk by Pantera was not overplayed. The thumbs, what a great package, Just, he's still working today. Obviously, that era where that period when he was smoking too much weed didn't do him any favors.
He played up on the cover of High Times a couple of times. I mean, he wasn't hiding
it. So didn't do any favors, especially with WWF at the time. But well, we don't care about that. We care about him for his, ECW period. His tag team with Sabu, especially, was like really crazy and really fun.
Two of them combined were lunatics.
Yeah. Absolute fucking lunatics, mate. Absolute fucking lunatics. So yeah, number 8, Rob Van Dam. Not on your list, I take it.
In my honorable mentions.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, mate. Number 8 then.
Number 8 is a wrestler that I've always felt is fantastic as an underdog, and in recent years has really stepped up to not quite a world level, but he's getting there, and that would be Sami Zayn.
Okay, yes. Not on my list, but El Generico.
Yep.
Yes, the origin story. Yep, love him. He's fantastic.
Absolutely love it. The original. What's the word I'm looking for here? The definitive luchador, something to that tune. So
I don't know. What I mean, is he Canadian?
Yes,
where's he from?
Canadian.
He's Canadian, so he's not a fucking luchador. But I mean, he used to come out with the "Ole Ole," song and the mask originally when it was El Generico. The El Generico was like obviously a piss take, wasn't it, on the generic, mask wrestling, I guess. But in the ring, he was anything but generic.
Oh, he's got an interesting style of wrestling as well, because he's got almost a style that looks like he's desperately trying to achieve whatever he can. Everything he's pulling off is by the skin of his teeth, but at the same time, he does make it look really good.
Yeah.
He's got, he's had to change his style up a little bit whilst he's in WWE, but even as of the most recent WrestleMania, they let him use a move which he hasn't used since he came to WWE, which is the turnbuckle brainbuster. Which, you can understand why they might turn around to go, Sammy, man, we don't want you doing that anymore. So.
You get the impression this was a move that only was done in Japan, because you've only ever seen it in like the N64 wrestling games. It's the only time you saw it. Oh my god! And then he did it at WrestleMania this year. Holy shit!
It was just brilliant. I mean, him especially when he's feuding with Kevin Steen, or as he's now known, Kevin Owens.
Yes.
The two of them have been wrestling together for decades, and they've put on some bangers over the years in different federations. They seem to follow each other around, and there have been a couple of matches I've watched just between these two where you can see that they just want to fight forever. They do. They put together such brilliant matches. And also, in more recent years, Sammy's really been showing his comedy side in terms of...
Yes.
He is an exceptionally funny guy. Watching some of the stuff he's done in the Bloodline storyline, which, right in and of itself, the Bloodline story is meant to be a serious, heavy storyline involving an unbeaten world champion. Then you've got Sami Zayn stood off to one side, just utterly just sabotaging the tone of the entire scene, but making it all the better because of it. It's great.
It makes you wonder whether or not he's been receiving training, let's say, in his charisma since during this whole period, or do you think maybe he was never allowed?
I think he might have been told to sort of like tone it down. I think a lot of it is coming out of, it's almost ad-libbing. I think that's the funniest parts. I mean, he's managed to. I think there's compilations you can find on YouTube of all of the members of the Bloodline just corpsing out because he just comes out with something that wasn't in the script, and you can see they just weren't ready for it. And I think it's one of the best ones when he coined the term Usi. Because you got the Usos, and he just turns around and goes, I feel Jey Uso isn't acting very Usi. And he's just Roman Reigns just staring at him with his eyes wide, and you can see him trembling as he's trying to fight down, sort of like laughing. Because it's the most utterly fucking stupid thing to say, but everything about the moment, you can see he cracks, and it just puts a grin on your face to see a person that can make an entire stadium laugh just off the top of his head. He's a brilliant character. He's got a lot of heart, and it's good to see that. Yeah, my number 8, Sami Zayn.
Okay. I'm wondering about this one, Mark. Do you have Kurt Angle in your list?
Yes, I do.
Higher or number 7?
I got him at number 7.
Oh!
Yeah.
We got a tiebreaker. Okay, let's flip a coin for this one. Let's flip a coin. Okay, who gets it? Heads or tails, Mark? I'll let you do it.
Heads again.
It's heads. Okay, you can lead this one. Go for it, dude.
Oh my days, man! Kurt Angle is.
What can you say?
He is pound for pound one of the best wrestlers of his era. For a man that had no intention of ever coming into pro wrestling, as an Olympic athlete that broke his neck whilst he was competing to and still won the gold medal, to suddenly transition across to this fucking carnival show and thrive. It wasn't enough that the man was actually technically proficient. He was charismatic as fuck. He was funny as hell. He had no problem being the butt of a joke at any given moment, and everything that he does, he makes it look so. He can snap between hilarious and brutal at the drop of a hat, at the drop of an exceptionally small cowboy hat at times as well. I mean, what could you add to this man? I mean, I don't want to gush about him too much, but fuck, this guy was brilliant.
Just like, pound for pound, as you say, pound for pound, one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Had a great finishing move with the angle slam where he could do anywhere, then added it to his repertoire, the ankle lock as well. I mean, when he first came into WWF, he was like much bulkier and he slimmed down, didn't he? Become more of a lean, mean fighting machine, let's say.
Back when he was the Olympic athlete and all that.
Yeah, when he was the Olympic athlete and he had this black, or brown crew cut, those bright blue eyes. He sort of portrayed, and it's really cheesy, like American themes music. He sort of portrayed this character that was like thought he was the American hero, but this was an era when this was at the back end of the Attitude Era, where American heroes, we were not interested in American heroes. We were interested in beer drinking maniacs, and piss takers and jokers. And he came out, and the joke was on him, but we all laughed at the joke, and he got the joke as well. That's one thing.
It's like when he started chanting "You suck" during his
yeah.
And he leaned into it. Even when he came out the microphone, he tried to shout back, "I don't suck. I don't."
Perfect. He got the business, and like I say, so many incredible matches over the years. There's just a million. AJ Styles, Benoit, it goes on. He's just like easily one of the all-time greats. And then in TNA, absolutely, knocked it out.
He held every belt at one point.
Exactly. Probably had a better career in TNA overall in terms of the quality of his wrestling and the quality of his work. But because he sort of became more of an MMA Kurt Angle, I would say.
Oh, like a shoot wrestler, yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. He evolved, what you got to do. But that all-American hero also is incredibly iconic and incredibly funny. So
I will say about one thing about Kurt Angle as well is that he had a move that he rarely hit, but he made it look fucking beautiful, and that was that moonsault.
Oh, his moonsault was fantastic, yeah.
And he used to commit to it. Even when he was missing, he would pancake the shit out of himself on the canvas.
Absolutely, yeah.
Literally didn't flinch, took it all, and off the cage a couple of times.
Yeah.
I mean, who moonsaults off a fucking cage? That is above 200 pounds.
Yes.
So, all respect, all dues. I mean, it's a man who's had his fair share of demons, as of most wrestlers. But I feel that he is always going to be one of the greats. He'll be considered up one of the greats of wrestling in the future.
Absolutely. Oh, if he's on, I've always got time to watch him.
Absolutely.
Always got time to watch him. So, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, number 7. Okay, then. Well, okay, Mark. Your number 6.
My number 6 is Ric Flair.
Higher on my list. So, my number 6 is AJ Styles.
I haven't got him.
Oh, did you consider him?
I considered him at one point.
Oh, I don't know. For me, Pound for pound, one of the greatest of all time.
I mean, he is the man that slow motion was made for. I mean,
incredible. Let's be honest, any match involving him, Christopher Daniels, and Samoa Joe in any combination, all three of them, or one or two of them in TNA, almost all of them are like 5-star matches. All of them. All of them. The triple threats, man. What the fuck, man? What the absolute fuck can you say about that?
Oh yeah, the constant weaving of like grapples between the three guys. They came up and innovated all kinds of new ways in which three people can wrestle together.
Incredible. I think that while he sort of, to me, AJ was the face of TNA, really, because he was there like Sting almost, like in WCW, there for a long time, and then when like other wrestlers came in, they started trying to steal his thunder, and I think a lot of TNA hardcore never cared for that, and they still cheered him on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He was always accepted to be like the TNA guy, I think. But then he went to Japan, and then he went to WWF, and he became even better. He had a better look, better charisma, and had some of the best matches of his career. The Nakamura series, for God's sake, man.
Oh, him and Nakamura was brilliant. The fact that he kept going for the nut shots as well was hilarious.
Just incredible. Also, one of the most fucking dangerous but interesting finishes in the business.
Oh, the Stars Clash. Yeah.
What the fuck? That's so dangerous.
Well, you've seen it when it goes wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my
crack your chest open.
I'm not sure whether or not I'd let him do it to me. It sort of puts you in like an upside down, standing up Boston Crab, and then like fucking face busters you. Like, what the fuck?
And also the phenomenal forearm, which I don't think many other people, if anyone, does anything looking like that, but it just looks beautiful as a setup to a finisher. It's like a signature move,
Interestingly enough, Jim Ross went about saying that AJ Styles was his greatest mistake. Did you know that?
Oh, did he have the opportunity to sign him?
Basically, AJ Styles was signed to WCW at the back end of the company's tenure, let's say, and then when WWF bought WCW, which included all of the wrestlers, it was Jim Ross's charge to go, you, no, and he said no to AJ.
Oh, how do you say no to AJ, man?
And then he went to TNA and did what he did. Exactly.
I said they could have pulled a DDP with him. So I mean,
who knows? It was in the end, it worked out better for him, But that's really fascinating that Jim Ross says that. So number 6, AJ. Mark?
Okay. Oh, shall we throw in a little bit?
Let's do your number 6, and then we'll do
I did. I said,
did you?
Flair.
Oh, we sort of alternated, didn't we? Oh, yeah, because of that coin toss. It's sort of thrown the momentum. Because I've got a few mentions actually. So I'm going to do my number 5. I'm going to do my number 5. You do number 5, and I'll take a break. Okay. I'll do my number 5 to keep it in order. Okay, my number 5 is the master of chewing gum, Mark.
Ha.
Kurt Hennig.
Ah, Mr. Perfect.
Oh my God! Speaking of Ric Flair, as you mentioned a minute ago, second greatest seller in the history of the business.
Oh, this is the guy that Dolph Ziggler took all the notes from. So just
the way he got flipped around the ring and thrown around the ring. He was clearly like doing it to make people look good. I mean, like Ric Flair did it, in the 80s and whatever.
Ric Flair made it look like a cartoon. Whilst Perfect made it like he was in traction. So
it made it look like it really fucking hurt him.
Oh, that one he always liked to do where he'd be hunched over, holding onto the rope, and someone would kick his leg out, and he used to just flip backwards and land on his head. And it genuinely, I mean, he was the one who used to do the twisting somersault when he got clotheslined.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. Incredible. A great character as well, Mr. Perfect. I used to love it when he used to walk out with that cheesy music, chewing that gum like a complete tosser, and then he would spit it and bat it into the crowd. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
I love his flipping snapmare. He was like where you have the opponent sat on the floor and he sort of like forward flip over them and like snapmare himself and like neck breaker them. Yep. Crazy move. I love how the perfect plex, which was like a fisherman pin buster. Old, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he used to pull it to the pinning combination. Yeah,
that's right, and that was a really protected move. I'll always remember his match for the IC title against Bulldog, British Bulldog, and they really hammered it home about how this was such a great move, and Bulldog kicks out of it, to get Bulldog over. Just a great character, great in the ring, great technician, great seller, Also, Mark, a great country singer.
Yes. Apparently rap is crap. So...
I like country music.
Yeah.
I like country girls. Oh, dear.
That was actually catchy as all fuck. I don't think WCW expected there to be such a positive response to that song.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Do you remember when I had the soundtrack?
Yeah.
On CD?
Yeah, that's a great tunes on it, man.
Oh, there you go. I've got the lyrics for you. I like country music. I love country girls. I like Willie Nelson. And don't forget about Merle. There's only one thing that I hate, because it's a bunch of crap. I hate rap. I mean, that's just hilarious. And then they come out in this the West Texas Redneck stable, and they just like perform it live. And oh my god, like people would just fucking hate them so much.
Yep.
And this is when they were feuding with Conan and Mysterio, wasn't it?
Oh, with the No Limit Soldiers with Master P as well.
Yeah. I mean, like, the additional star, like, famous people was kind of lame. But, like, and this is after Mysterio was demasked.
Yeah.
But I kind of felt this was a good feud, and it was fun, you know? Barry Windham, I want to say, as well, was in the West Texas Rednecks.
Yeah,
so,
he was.
You know, yeah. This is, Kurt Hennig, like, forever, you know, amazing. Incidentally, just doing a bit of research recently, I found out that he was one of the wrestlers that was sacked after the airplane ride from hell, which will no doubt come up in a bit later. Yeah.
Oh, god damn you, Rick! Seriously.
Yeah. But I just want to say that, like, Kurt Hennig's best matches though were against Bret Hart. They had some absolute fucking banging matches. Oh my god, you know, like in the 90s. What a great guy. We love you, Kurt. R.I.P. Number 5, Mark, for you, please.
My number 5 is The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
So, Mark, I'm going to ask you, do you think he's on my list?
I honestly don't know.
Not even my top 20.
Really?
Nope.
Ah, why not? Has he just never really been your kind of wrestler?
On the mic, one of the greatest of all time. In the ring, average. Very average, in my opinion. Always has been. I think his matches were good with Austin. The 3 series were good because of the heat, because of his character, because of Austin. Obviously, Austin allowed him to retire him in the 3rd match. You know, we all know that The Rock thanked him at the end of it, didn't we? I mean, I don't think The Rock's a bad guy. I don't know him or whatever, but I just never. I know you're going to say this in a minute, so I'm kind of spoiling your take here. Okay, yes, he got an elbow drop over. I mean, you've got to give someone credit for that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, he had like a great series with Triple H. You know, he had a great series with Mankind, Mick Foley, and obviously all the comedy stuff they did as well, Rock and Sock. But that's like the characterization, the performing, which is always great. The charisma, his charisma is obviously off the charts, but I just not there. Never have been. Even as a film star, I just don't care. You know, he's massively popular. People love him. Do I think he was? Okay, let me ask you a question, Mark. Do you think he is a bigger star as Hulk Hogan?
I think I do.
I disagree with that. I actually don't think so.
No, man, he cracked Hollywood far bigger than.
No,
Hogan.
Okay. In terms of numbers, yes, you're right.
And also, he has headlined multiple WrestleManias. He has become a brand in and of himself, separate from wrestling.
At this point, yes. I don't know. He's probably headlined more than Hogan has now, because Hogan left. Bear in mind, he stayed in WWE for his whole career, so I think you can't really compare the 2 careers overall. Bear in mind, Hogan was in the top of WWF for 10 years, and then he left for WCW and was on top of that company for 10 years.
Yeah.
As a heel, whereas The Rock obviously did the same thing. But I don't know. I think Hogan built the business that there is today. And I just think Hogan's got more charisma. I would say The Rock's better in the ring, because Hogan's not great in the ring. But,
The Rock's got a certain snappiness to his style, which I always kind of liked.
Is that what it is, right? Okay, let's just go for this right now. Is Hogan in your list?
No.
No. So he's not in my list either. He's not even in my special mentions, right? But when I go back and watch Hogan now as a modern fan, there's just something about the way he makes me care about him in the ring. I don't know what it is. There's just this star power, this emotional energy that he draws towards him as a face that, even now, I think just really grabs me. It really captivates me. And The Rock doesn't do that for me. So it's purely subjective. It's absolutely 100% subjective opinion. So,
no, well, for me, The Rock, I've always found him immensely entertaining.
yeah, absolutely.
The thing is,
100%.
if you go talk about narrative storytelling, sometimes the best characters aren't characters in and of themselves, but how they interact with other people.
Absolutely.
And his
absolutely.
interactions with somebody, whether it be Austin, whether it be Mankind, hell, whether it be with Hurricane Helms.
Yeah.
It's just the way in which this guy.
He was the man of a thousand catchphrases.
Yes, I mean, literally, they had the T-shirts printed 20 minutes after the interview, sort of thing.
Yeah,
It was the stuff this man used to come out with. The concept of taking yourself and turning it up to 11.
Oh, it wasn't 11, was it?
His was somewhere around about the high 300s, yeah. And yeah, I don't know. Just something about him just makes me chuckle. The way in which he used to utterly sort of like, I mean, I heard one announcer describe the fact that they'd never seen someone who could make an interview so interactive with the audience.
Yes. Wow. Come on. Austin got one word over.
Yeah, and we're still
and they're saying it now. And they're still saying it now.
God, I mean, I hate Austin for that.
So does every single wrestler ever since, because even when people are doing interviews in the ring, people are going, "What?" It's just like, the ghost of Austin.
Fuck's sake. Yeah, but nonetheless.
Yeah,
I like The Rock, man. I mean, I find him. I mean, I will say his recent outing at WrestleMania fell a little flat by comparison to his previous eras. But it should be interesting to see if he's got any more left.
He's getting old, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to hold that against him. I don't know if he maybe. I mean, there were people pushing for him to come back 5 years ago, but maybe now he's a bit not past it, because that'd be mean to say that, because he is still more than capable to put on an entertaining match. But I don't know.
His greatest moment, Mark, and it's not even a match, and this is kind of my problem, is This Is Your Life with Mick Foley.
Yeah, that's the one that spiked the viewings. It's got one of the highest ratings in wrestling of all time.
So, as I said, as an entertainer, like, absolutely fucking hilarious. Like, so funny. When they put him with, like, Odd Couples works. You know, Kane and X-Pac worked. You know, The Rock
and Goldberg Dust,
yeah, exactly. It just works. You know, the odd pairings in that. So, you know, it's funny. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit overdosed by The Rock as well, because when we were kids and wrestling fans, we knew other wrestling fans, and you know, Lawton, Wayne, you know, would knock us off.
They fucking love The Rock. Yeah.
Like, you know, I was called Rudy Poo repeatedly for a long time by Wayne. I remember Wayne calling me over and over again. You know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. No, don't get me wrong. He wouldn't be in my top 20, but he's obviously like one of the greatest of all time. Just, I said,
he wasn't one of your greatest, yeah.
No. As an entertainer, yeah, he's definitely up there as an entertainer. But my top 10 isn't about entertainers. You know, well, some of them are. Obviously, some
people entertain in different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I looking at my list now, it's mainly workers. To be honest with you, you know, less entertainers. So, right. Did you have anything else to say about The Rock, though? I kind of derailed you a little bit.
No, that's all right. No, I'm into it. Yo.
Cool.
No, I think we covered it.
Right, cool. Well, let's jump into a break then, and we'll continue the top 10 in a second. So, be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. So let's not waste any time. I believe it is my turn, Mark, at number 4. Are you ready?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, my number 4, my 4th favourite wrestler of all time is the Mitchell Man, Randy Savage. On your list?
No.
Anywhere?
No. No, I'm aware of Macho Man. Thing is...
No, wait, no. I wasn't, like, tutting at you. I was actually just, like, dying to myself about how much I love this guy. But anyway, you're very well allowed. Tell me why he's not on your list.
Thing is, no disrespect to the Macho Man in the slightest. I think that he was a brilliant wrestler. I mean, he was a guy that lived and breathed his character to the point where the lines blurred.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's rumors saying that he never dropped character. Even backstage, he was always talking that fashion. Even when the cameras stopped rolling, he was just renowned for being a meticulous planner, along with the likes of DDP.
Of course.
He was a draw. He knew how to work the industry, and easily it is between him and Hogan for who was the kings of early 90s WWF.
Him, Hogan, and Warrior, I would say.
Yeah.
Are the three. But I would probably put Macho over Warrior, personally.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So, my love of Macho Man has come from reassessing old wrestling. And, even up until his WCW return with Gorgeous George, who, was a gorgeous valet. Of course, he always had a valet. Valets worked. Even though he didn't need a valet, he had Elizabeth and Sensational Sherry. And then, of course, Gorgeous George later on in life. The Macho Man, was just an insane character, wasn't he? So memorable, so identifiable. You just, like The Rock and like Hogan, like the greatest characters in the history of the business. You see his silhouette, he was. You hear his voice, he was just so recognizable.
Oh, when that music kicked in, like even though it's just the American anthem, or Land of Hope and Glory, that became his theme, and it wasn't even because of some sort of American patriotism. It was just that was Macho's theme. It suited him.
It's something majestic about it, as majestic as him.
Yeah,
but like he just had Mark some incredible matches in his career, man. Have you seen the matches against Steamboat, Ricky Steamboat?
Yeah,
they are incredible. I mean, for the time, obviously, they're simplistic versus what you see today. But in terms of like pacing, time management, drama, narrative in a ring, incredible. He actually made the Ultimate Warrior, look good, which is because he had a really awful feud with him, really, because the Warrior was awful. But as a wrestler, but as a great character, obviously, and he had loads of great matches against Mr. Perfect. There was, of course, the great matches with Jake Roberts, which sort of led to the feud after his match Made in Heaven, where he married Elizabeth. But I tell you what it is with Macho Man for me overall, dude. I tell you what it is. It is his WrestleMania match against Hulk Hogan that puts him up there for me.
Is that the Mega Powers collide?
When the Mega Powers explode, they did that story on the two biggest faces in the company, Hogan and Macho Man, and then they have like a stupid argument over Elizabeth, isn't it? And they have a match at WrestleMania. And for me, that is like one of the most heartbreaking matches I have ever watched, because fucking hell, Macho should have won it. Honestly, you watch it. Macho is so over. He's so over in that match. And you watch it and he just outperforms Hogan in charisma, in ability. He just looks better. He's just incredible. And Hogan kicks out of the fucking elbow drop and then leg drops him and wins. And it's just so infuriating to watch. For me, it should have been Macho Man. One of the greatest mistakes in the history of wrestling for me. I mean, maybe this is like WrestleMania 5, I think, or is it 4? It was mid-period, so I do think Hogan was somewhat out of his way at that point. 6 was against the Warrior, so yeah, it might have been 4. It just angers me. It just really angers me so much, and like because of that, watching that match maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, rewatching it as now, it made me love him even more. It just made me think like he really is one of the greatest of all time, because of the fact that he is the whole package. Was incredible in the ring, and I just think he just deserved more than he got. I really do. I don't think he got nearly. I mean, he was loved, he was respected, but I don't think he got the accolades that he deserved personally. Yeah. So
I will remember one match that he had with Rowdy Roddy Piper when they were both in WCW.
Yeah.
Where the two of them kicked off and they just started screaming at each other in the ring, just bucket loads of insanity in the ring. But the thing is, they were both signed for a tag team match with each other against the NWO.
Yeah.
So they came to the agreement like, right, first we're going to kick the shit out of those guys. Then we're going to kick the shit out of each other. Right. And it's just this insanity of the two of them going hammer and tongs against the NWO, but with the pure intent that once the match was done, they were going to turn on each other, and just it was no sort of like betrayal here. It was out in the open. They both knew that they were going to have a match immediately afterwards, and it just lent this weird, almost like the fact they almost respected each other because they both were on similar wavelength with their insanity.
Absolutely. You know, like the Macho Man was very famous for being paranoid, wasn't he, behind the scenes of Hogan?
Yeah.
You know, trying to.
It was politicking.
Yeah, of all the politicking. Like sometimes I think that WrestleMania match, like when you watch it, I just felt like it should have been Macho Man who won it, and it almost makes me think Hogan it was Hogan. You know, Hogan would refuse to fucking drop for him. It just makes me so angry. It just makes me so fucking angry. You know, so. Yeah, anyway, maybe it kind of sounds like I've got a vendetta against Hogan, and that's why Macho Man's a 4. It's not. It's because Macho Man has been in some of my favourite matches of all time. And, you know, so. Incidentally, a lot of my favourite matches of all time involve Ricky Steamboat, it turns out, who's not in my top 10. But that was kind of sad, really.
A solid worker.
Yeah, a great worker. So, anyway, that's my number 4. Who's yours, Mark?
My number 4 is Eddie Guerrero.
Not in my list.
Oh, surprising, man.
Are you? Are you surprised by that?
Man, the guy was a fucking phenomenal worker.
But what you know of me and how long you've known me and all our talks about wrestling. Are you really surprised? Because I don't want to jump your train. Yes, he was an incredible worker. He just never was one of my favorites. He was always one of yours. I thought Guerrero was going to be in your top 10. I almost think I know what your number 2 and number 1 is now as well. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, like, Guerrero as your number 4 tracks perfectly. So, yeah.
I mean, the man was, he was the guy that, alongside Rey Mysterio, the two of them took Mexican Lucha Libre right to the world stage.
Yes.
And these two, like, I mean, it could be argued they're two sides of the same coin. They both have very different sort of like approaches in the ring.
Yes.
Rey being the superhero, whilst Eddie was very happy to play the villain.
Yes. Oh, yes. A great
villain. He did it so well. And even when he leaned into his lie, he cheats, his steals kind of like persona that he played in his later years. Mm-hmm. He was the psychology that he would demonstrate in the ring as well, being able to manipulate the rules specifically to make it look like the other side was cheating at times and things like that.
Yes.
But on and above that, he had the ability to back it up. This is the man. It's one of the few people I've ever seen pull off a moonsault DDT. And it looks fucking beautiful.
Yes.
And whilst his frog splash wasn't on Rob Van Dam's level, it was a good frog splash.
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
But there was a reason why they made him the head of the LWO. I mean, firstly, because he could probably speak English better than most of the Mexican wrestlers they had signed in WCW at the time. I think some of them had no English ability whatsoever. And often the communication for that took place through Conan. But he had charisma. And I do find it tragic that his career was cut short. Mm-hmm. And the reasons why it was cut short through the use of potentially steroids that over-enlarged his heart.
Yes.
Potentially because he was trying to compete with wrestlers that were far bigger than him.
Yes.
I mean, the size and bulk that he packed on.
It was quite worrying when you saw him in later years. It was like, oh my God. Yeah. His physique was very impressive and did not look natural.
But that one night on WrestleMania 22, when him and Chris Benoit both respectively won the top titles and stood in the ring, like two wrestlers that at any other time people would have said would never be on that sort of level.
Yes.
And who both had tragic endings in different ways later.
Yes.
So, man, I love Eddie.
No, he's great. One of the greatest workers of all time, for definite.
I do think that WWE milked the holy shit out of his death afterwards. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
It felt like I don't think a wrestler's death should be used like that. It's just not right. I mean, use his moves, let other wrestlers inherit him, but constantly invoking his name to get cheap heat in feuds, it's just fucking poor taste. But that's just me. Maybe Eddie would have appreciated that.
Maybe he might have wanted it. Who knows?
I mean, I can imagine he was a worker to the end. So
yes, I say a great heel, a great heel, very charismatic man. So,
but yeah, that's my number 4.
Number 4. Okay, Mark. My number 3 is Ric Flair.
Here we go.
Finally, the Nature Boy. What can you say about Ric Flair, Mark? I mean, I hate saying that. It's a very cliched thing to say on a podcast. It's a very cliched thing to say in a review. It's a very cliched thing. You just don't say it. It's a fucking cliche.
Yeah, well, how much time you got, man?
I know, right? We're trying to keep this, like, not too fucking long. Ric Flair, the dirtiest player in the game, the greatest heel in the history of the business, the greatest seller in the history of the business. You know, did play the face at times. One of the greatest.
But he's far better as a villain, man.
Always better as a villain. One of the greatest promos in the business. The look, the jacket, you know, the robe. Sorry, the hair. You know, wheeling, dealing. You can watch almost any. I actually follow an Instagram page called No Context Ric Flair Memes, and it's just like random clips of Ric Flair, just like with weird like subtitles, and it just makes me laugh just seeing Ric Flair do his crazy stuff. So I'm just going to very, very quickly run down some of his greatest opponents, Mark. So I don't want to go on about too long. So obviously Sting, very important to Ric Flair. Steamboat, he had some incredible matches with Ricky Steamboat. He had some great matches with Randy Savage in WWF. Obviously, the Royal Rumble, one of the greatest Royal Rumble of all time.
Oh, the one where he rolled out at the beginning and just...
it blew my mind. This match where there are 30 wrestlers overall, and to eliminate a wrestler, you have to throw them over the ropes. As a kid, I'd never seen anyone do this. He was rolling under the ropes and running away like a cowardly heel. Like, absolute fucking genius.
Yeah.
Genius psychology. Genius. Absolutely brilliant, you know. Another really great skit that I actually found recently, funnily enough, was actually involving Kimberly Page. Do you remember this one?
No.
So there was this really bad feud. It was really, really bad between Kimberly Page, Diamond Dallas Page's valet. At the time in WCW, they were sort of trying to build her into this like heel-like character, and she was feuding with Ric Flair's son, David Flair. Right? You remember that? It's really bad. And there's this sequence where she's like supposedly taken David Flair to a hotel, and she's going to seduce him, and she's like got this sexy get up on. She takes something off, she's got even less on, and like she starts pulling these glasses, and she turns around, opens the door, and guess who's there? It's Rick. And it is so funny. Another great opponent, obviously, of Ric Flair's is Shawn Michaels, the man who retired him, which was a beautiful match. Really, really beautiful match. And obviously, Mark, there is one other opponent of Rick's, the most important opponent of all of them, his jacket.
My God, that thing used to work so hard for him, man.
I mean, like obviously Eric Bischoff would be in this as well, but it was often involving promos aimed at Eric Bischoff, the owner of WCW, because they actually had real life heat, didn't they? You know, because Ric Flair wanted time off to go and see his son graduate or play football or something, and Eric Bischoff wouldn't let him have it off. I mean, who's right? Who knows? There's actually another great opponent after this. I'll tell you who it is after this. But anyway, yes, he would like, you know, grab the jacket, fling it on the floor. He's like going bright red, unbutton his jacket, screaming at the crowd who are loving every minute. And he start like elbow dropping his jacket and just going mad. Hilarious stuff, you know. But also, Mark, there's another opponent. It's the air stewardess from the Airplane from Hell, who he supposedly walked around on the plane with his fucking robe on, completely naked and repeatedly flashed her. It was very uncomfortable. So
yeah,
he lived his character, man. He was his character.
Ric Flair. Seriously.
Yeah, he was his character, you know. But you know, it can't be said like, you know, he just, you know, the Flair flop, you know, the fact that, I mean, like later years, I don't think anyone ever tapped out the figure four leg lock. I think really he put the figure four leg lock on to have it reversed on him. That was the point. You know, like Ric Flair, man, like he's just, yeah.
Thing is, we came to see Ric Flair at a time when he was somewhat in the twilight of his career. We didn't see those 70s and 80s and early 90s stuff too much. It was only in the
90s. I saw the 90s. I discovered Ric Flair when he came to WWF, and the thing is, he was a revelation in WWF because at the time
he wasn't your usual villain.
No, he wasn't cartoony. He was just some crazy guy with the robe. He had this great gimmick where he had the NWA WCW belt with him, didn't he? And he took it to WWF and was saying, "I am the real champion." And they were blurring it out on screen. It was brilliant. But like, he had like, I don't know, Adam, my brother, absolutely loved him the moment he walked on screen. The moment he saw him, he was like, "Oh my God, this guy's amazing." Because I think Adam had a sort of, was sort of drawn to characters like that, and I was too, you know, like just he was cowardly but arrogant at the same time. He was just such a nuanced character, wasn't he? You know, despite the fact he portrayed this like, you know, womanizing scumbag most of the time, you know. Like, and then when I started watching WCW again in the late 90s, you know, it was like, oh, it's Ric Flair. It was great to see him again. And yes, I fell in love with him all over again. And then later on in life is when I went back and watched like his great matches, especially his Ricky Steamboat matches, like incredible matches. You know, so yeah, for me it was a bit earlier.
Yeah, I mean, certainly an icon in and of himself, easily on the same level as Hulk Hogan, at least in wrestling.
Yes.
Outside, Hogan may have escalated higher.
Yeah.
But the two of them were two titans of the industry.
Yeah.
So, would you say that's your...
That's my number 3, Mark. So what's your number 3?
My number 3 is the only man to surpass Dean Malenko in terms of holds.
Yeah.
And that'd be the man of 1,004 holds, Chris Jericho.
Oh, yeah, my number 9. Yeah.
So, man, one thing I'll give Chris Jericho credit for, which few wrestlers ever managed to achieve in the same way that he done, is the skill of reinvention.
Yes. Well, The Rock did reinvent himself quite a few times, but like not to the
same level. I mean, The Rock it was always some variation of The Rock.
Yeah.
But Jericho, I mean, you had the WCW Jericho, and that was entertaining as all fuck. Partially because management weren't even paying attention to what he was doing.
Yes.
And he was just doing his own thing as far as he was concerned. I mean, I wish they'd given him that Goldberg feud. I think that would have been money.
Yes, absolutely.
Then you've got the likes of when he got to WWE and he was allowed to really take the limiters off and just went for it. And it took him a year or two to kind of get the tone and the vibe of how it works over there.
I hated the fact that he came out on WWE. He had such a great build-up for WWF with the what was it? The Y2J problem, because it was linked with the Y2K problem, and he came out and The Rock just like shut him down, and I was like,
it buried him, and it was like, no, that's it. You don't put him against Rock straight off the bat. It should have been someone mid to higher, but it shouldn't have been The Rock.
Yeah. I mean, like in a sense, it's great that his first like verbal battle was against The Rock. I mean, that's very high. That's very quick. He was good enough to be in matches against The Rock and Triple H and Stone Cold and whatever, obviously.
Well, it was an endorsement.
Eventually, exactly. But I always felt like he got too buried, way too buried. And for me, The Rock was just a catchphrase machine, whereas for me, Chris Jericho, obviously he's not my number 3, but he's definitely up there with the greatest psychology in the history of the business. Like the way he manipulated the crowd, not just through his wrestling, but through his mic work. You know?
Yeah.
Like, incredible. Monday Night Jericho, Raw is Jericho, for example. Those two things, hilarious, you know, like, oh, man.
Then you've got the fact that once it's reaching the peak of his kind of, with his wild shirts, the long hair, the come on, baby,
that's right,
kind of style of wrestling, he then flips it on its head, and he comes out in a suit.
Yeah.
Like, head shaved down, cropped, with a stern look on his face. And then he leans into that for a couple of years.
It's a big transformation.
And it worked. He became such a different kind of villain to what he'd been before. And it's something that a lot of people have copied since, that when they want to turn villain, they put on a suit, they cut their hair short because it worked so well for him.
Yeah.
And then the list, man, that was fucking hilarious. Like, this man came out of a clipboard, and anyone who pissed him off, he'd announce, "You're going on the list." And this man can, like, literally, he can make an entire stadium pop just by clicking a ballpoint pen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fucking genius. The fact that literally by just raising a pen and clicking it, the crowd would lose their minds.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable that he was capable of this. And he's still trying. I mean, sometimes he has more hits and misses. Occasionally he does try a gimmick which doesn't work. He's not afraid to experiment, and he moves on and he finds something new. He's like fucking David Bowie as far as I'm concerned when it comes to wrestling.
Yes.
He's just a guy that he is a rock star in and of his own mindset as well.
Of course. With his band.
Yeah. Well, Fozzy, yeah.
Yeah.
They're all right. But I think he's a better wrestler than he is a singer.
I agree there.
Yeah. But as I say, a guy that at all different times of his career, I've always enjoyed watching him.
Always. Oh, yeah, he's always been a consistent say. He's definitely has to be in my top 10.
Yeah.
You know, just always admired him. Loads of great matches, loads and loads and loads. It's just never ending, you know. Juventud Guerrera, as the Rock would say. You know,
some
great
jabroni called Juventud.
You know, Incredible. And, great match with Shawn Michaels, obviously Malenko, Benoit, Mysterio. Obviously, there's Ralphus that must be brought up, his security guard that he just
my
randomly
fucking God,
picked.
yeah.
That's this just security guard that he picked out of like
He was one of the drivers of
the
WCW.
drivers. Who just had no, he didn't have any front teeth, so he was really overweight, and he just picked him and said, "You're going to be my." That's the thing about Jericho. He was like he was great at satire. The greatest subject of his satire was himself.
Absolutely willing to bury the shit out of himself if it got.
What about his last match? He got dragged out kicking and screaming, and loads of fans were like, "No, that's not fair." It's like,
no, Jericho asked for that.
He asked for that. Of course, that's perfect for Jericho. Of course, he knew that he was a heel. He knew what was good for business, and he just understood it. Like, what a great! I say, probably up there the best psychology in the business, possibly the best psychology ever in the business, possibly.
His understanding was often better than the management as well. So,
yeah, definitely, probably the best heel psychology in the business, I would say.
Yeah,
definitely. Just wow. And then of course, and still knocking it out of the park later in life, a little bit of the bubbly. What the fuck? I mean, how do you get to create catchphrases in your 50s still?
And shit that hasn't got anything to do with wrestling or stuff. It's just the kind of stuff that's he probably rattled off the top of his head, and the crowd grabbed it and went, "That's fucking hilarious."
What a great character. Great podcast as well. Great interviewer. Loved his autobiographies as well. Really insightful. And a dangerous guy. Obviously trained in the Stu Hart dungeon, wasn't he?
Yep.
Real tough guy. There was that story, wasn't there?
Where he fought Goldberg?
With Goldberg, yeah. Bill Goldberg, who he was like suggesting a great feud. As you said, would have been money. Goldberg was like, "Who's this puny guy?" And he literally fucking hurt.
He schooled him, yeah.
He schooled him, real guy, real tough guy as well, as everyone is from the dungeon. So, loved his tool set as well. Great drop kicks. He used to do the triangle drop kick, didn't he? So he would jump on the turnbuckle, and then drop kick over the ropes to the outside.
Oh, like the inside out, yeah.
That's it, yeah. And obviously the lion salt, the lion tamer, which is a fantastic modifier.
The only problem with lion tamer is that your opponent had to be able to take it right.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, when he was against the cruiserweights in WCW, that move looked fucking devastating.
Yeah, I loved it when he put his knee on the back of their head as well. Oh my god, so good.
But when he starts going against the likes of Austin and The Rock,
he changed. Didn't he get a new something? Didn't he create
a code breaker?
That's it, the code breaker.
Which is a good striking sort of straps his knees to their chest and lets himself fall backwards. It's still a solid finisher. But there was something about that original lion tamer that just looks fucking brutal.
Oh, so good. So good. So good. Fortunately, Jericho as a tag team has been seared into my brain as well. I'm surprised I haven't overdosed on Jericho.
Back when you could select the same character twice in the old wrestling games, yeah.
It's been Lawton and Wayne. We're just both our favourites are Jericho. Why would I play anyone else? We're just going to do Jericho. And it's like, fine. When we were doing Malenko and Benoit or
the old horseman,
yeah. So... Anyway, yeah, he just is one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. It was. I almost feel like he's too low for being at number 9. Looking at it now, I don't know. Maybe he could have been higher. I don't know. It's difficult. Not my top 5 though. But yeah, one of the greatest of all time, easily. So, are you finished with Chris Jericho?
Yes, I am.
Okay, my number 2. So, Mark, my number 2. If I tell you my number 2, it'll probably reveal my number 1. I'm wondering if you're right. We'll see. But my number 2 is Mr. Steve Borden, otherwise known as Sting. Sting. Go on.
Not on my list.
No, I didn't think it would be. Sting is. He was like the main face of WCW. And one of these wrestlers, again, that I would say is the whole package. His early career, he had the Ultimate Warrior style face paint because he's a tag team with the Ultimate Warrior previously. The bleached blonde hair, the Surfer Sting, we would call it. And he was just high energy, high flying, but powerful, wasn't he, as well? He had everything. He could do anything. He made everything look good. He had a submission hold. The splashes, the frog splashes, it's obviously as high flying as, say, a luchador. But, they put him over early on in WCW as the main face because he beat Sting. His matches against Ric Flair early on. They were great matches. He had great matches with Vader, and he was strong enough to wrestle Vader. All phenomenal. But obviously, Sting's most famous storyline is the Crow Sting storyline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is his most iconic image.
That was Scott Hall that actually innovated that, wasn't it?
That's correct. It's when they were like coming up the storyline that the NWO, led by Hulk Hogan and the Outsiders, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, were taking over in WCW. Would Sting join them, which he didn't, and there was the storyline about how they were sort of like making out that he was going to. They were manipulating him, emotionally abusing him.
I even liked in the lead up to it, you could see his face paint changing
over time, wasn't
and
it?
And it was becoming kind of darker, and then it became he still had the shape of the Surfer Sting type face paint, but it turned black and white.
Yeah, he had dark hair and he was getting longer, wasn't it, as well? Like a gradual transformation. And
it was an interesting concept.
It was good. It was very, very good. And he sort of represented the heart of WCW. That's what was so brilliant about this storyline, is that these wrestlers that were forming this NWO faction were actually wrestlers out of WCW. They were from other federations, and it just sort of mixed. Maybe one day we'll talk about it in depth.
Well, it gave the invasion angle credit.
Yeah, exactly. In an era where kayfabe was still like attempted to hold,
like the way, everything about. I mean, you're right. We'll get into that at some point because there's so much to talk about.
One day. But like for my money, like the NWO and Sting, like I say, like Sting basically leaves WCW, and like for 18 months doesn't wrestle, and he's seen like hanging around the rafters with like face paint very similar to the Crow character by Bar, obviously the Brandon Lee character. Looks strangely like Brandon Lee in that makeup. Very, very, very weird. I always thought like when he was pulling that sad face, like there was something like really, really quite like sad about him. Really, something investable about him. I always felt very invested in him as a character during this period when I've gone back and rewatched it. Obviously a very, very charismatic character as the Surfer Sting, and yet still very charismatic and powerful looking whenever he appeared. He would appear, wouldn't he, at the right moment and bring out his black baseball bat and like get involved and interfere. Yeah, for my money, this is one of like the best stories ever told in wrestling, but it's also like the worst payoff in the history of wrestling because they fucked it at the end, didn't they? For 18 months, they built Sting up as this like Avenger, watching these villains like run riot in this federation, and he sort of would appear every now and then like a vigilante and get involved. And then when the time finally came for him to wrestle Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hogan, for the title to get revenge on WCW, like Hogan just, they fucked it. Basically, long story short, they just fucked it. Stories change, don't they? They mix and match. Who said what? Who did what? Sting.
Everyone's pointing fingers, but no one wants to take credit for why it played out like that.
But the long story short is that like it just had a bad ending, and Sting looks bad at the end of it when really he should look triumphant, unfortunately. But regardless, this is another wrestler who's constantly reinvented himself over the years. He had lots of great matches. In WCW, and then obviously was in TNA for a long time. Did like the Joker Sting, which some people loved, some people hated.
That cracked me up.
I liked it. Very, very good at doing that, in my opinion. Very natural mic worker. Great voice, great presentation, great charisma, great body language. Just something. He's just a star.
Well, the thing is, he took on almost a Jim Carrey quality during that era.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when I love the best part of that gimmick when he was trying to convince Hulk Hogan to be Hulk Hogan again, wasn't it? And he was coming out in Hulk Hogan jackets and like, don't you remember Hulk when you were Hulk Hogan? Like really, really funny. Like this crazed fanboy of Hulk Hogan, like really funny, and he sold it. He was so on board for it. Just like
he's a man that's been to the top of the mountain, and once you've been there, some wrestlers can go, I've had enough of that. It's time for me to have some fun now.
He's put plenty of people over the years. Yeah, he's put plenty.
No, you do get two types of wrestlers: the ones that get to the top and then never want to let go.
Yeah,
and the ones that get to the top and think, I've achieved. Now it's time to put someone else over.
What's good for business? Isn't
it?
What's good for business? So yeah, obviously. There's just not really much to say for it, apart from the fact that while I would say the end of the Crow Sting / NWO storyline is the biggest fuck up in the history of wrestling, the second biggest fuck up in the history of wrestling is the fact that Sting's tenure in WWE was an absolute disaster.
No, fucking travesty, yeah.
Whoever wrote this deserves to be shot. And the fact that he didn't wrestle the Undertaker, who was obviously like his literal. I mean, how does this happen, Mark? The Undertaker was his mirror opposite in another
I would have
federation.
accepted him having a loss to the Undertaker at WrestleMania.
That could have been his retirement match.
Yeah, it would have been perfect.
Or make it a draw. That would be better. But then there's a story. But it just makes me so angry. Both these guys stuck to their guns for the entirety of like the 90s Monday Night Wars, WCW versus WWF. Sting never left, Undertaker never left. Both dark, brooding characters, both workers. How did they never wrestle? Just it's a crime. And then they had the NWO helping. I can't even get into it.
Yeah,
awful. It stopped me. I was giving wrestling a second chance at this point, and that just made me go, they don't know what they're doing. They're idiots. They're all idiots. It was awful. It was awful. So, but so many great matches, so many great memories, so many great promos, so many great characters. I just can't help it. It's a very subjective opinion. It's 100% a hard pick for me at number 2. It is Sting, the Stinger. So, Mark, who's your number 2?
My number 2 is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Really? Okay, I was not expecting this from you, actually. I know who your number 1 is now, but number 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Okay.
I think I was weighing this up. He might not be as high on my list next week, but as I feel currently, Stone Cold is a fucking entertaining guy.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I am not like disputing anything. I'm not going to dispute this whatsoever. Like, this is a spoiler for my honorable mentions. He's in my honorable mentions. He nearly was in my top 10 so many times. Just
on every level, like a guy that it took him a while to find his tone, to find his character in wrestling. He went for a couple of gimmicks and a couple of federations, but when he got it, when he finally clicked for him, the Austin 316, that promo, it lit the wrestling world on fire.
Yeah.
It just, everything that came after that, the working man versus the authoritative figure, that angle.
Mm-hmm. Him versus Vince McMahon, yeah.
The two of them, they made fucking magic. And he could do comedy so well as well. It was
Yeah.
I still love that sequence in the shopping centre with Booker T. Where Booker T's looking for him and he just attacks a random bald guy and then realizes he hasn't got him. And then he stands there and you just see him, his eyes wide, and he realizes Austin is right behind me. And it's just, I mean, he's had countless WrestleMania matches. He's had countless main events. He's feuded with just about everybody on a world level, whether it be Angle, whether it be Triple H, whether it be The Rock in multiple outings. All of them were made better through their interaction with Austin. And I fucking love the guy, man. I just, in pure entertainment, if I measure it, I mean, yes, wrestling ability did reduce in later years because of the stinger he took from Owen Hart. It had forced him to change up his wrestling style, so maybe his wrestling style wasn't as, I'm not going to say acrobatic, because it wasn't acrobatic to begin with, but
let's quote a man. Very punchy, kicky.
Yeah. But I listen to his podcast to this day because he's just
fantastic.
An entertaining guy. Even when he's not talking about wrestling, when he's just talking about random shit.
Yeah.
He is a funny fucking guy to listen to.
Yeah, he's great.
So,
great.
There's just charisma off the charts.
Yeah.
And the difference between him and The Rock is The Rock, you get the impression he's taking his character and turning it up. Whilst Austin, I genuinely believe he is that person.
Yes. The beer drinking, maybe that much beer drinking and like lack of respect for authority, maybe, but that's narrative based. But yeah, definitely. He was real.
I even saw his podcast where it was like someone asked him, like, when you used to come out to the ring and you just come down to the ring and you were mouthing loads of things and you're constantly talking to yourself as you walk to the ring. What were you saying? And he goes, "Oh, I'm just talking about how much I'm going to kick his fucking ass. And I'm like, you motherfucker, you piece of shit." And then just kind of like the way he's stomping and. That fits as well. You can just imagine him just getting himself worked up as he gets down to the ring. So.
Perfect. I mean, as we were just mentioning earlier on, like how wrestlers can get like secondary gimmicks over. You were just mentioning how much you hate him for it. He got a word over that to this day haunts wrestlers. Haunts.
Damn, man.
To this day, he got what over? I mean, like, come on. Even The Rock can't even say that.
I mean, have you heard it resulted in a lot of the upper stars having to change their interview and like promo styles.
Yeah.
You have to be able to talk in a fashion that diffuses the what chant.
Yeah.
Where you shift your shift the beats of how you're saying your sentences and stuff like that to cut through when people are going to say what to slowly take the momentum out of it.
Yes.
And there are certain people that can do it very well. I mean, a man learned to sort of like diffuse the what chant pretty fucking early on because I think everyone was doing it to him. So.
Speaking of McMahon, actually, I just wanted to say that I did actually go back and with the advent of the WWE Network streaming service, I did go back and actually rewatch almost all of the Attitude Era Austin Rock feud. Sorry, Austin McMahon feud. You know, and the truth is that you can look at it now and say, obviously, he had the pile driver, broke his neck, his wrestling got worse, but it's just fucking good television, man. Whether it's good wrestling or not, like you can see why it was so popular in the mainstream. While 316 t-shirts were everywhere, even in South and High Street, everywhere. You know, like it's just damn good television, and it struck a nerve, didn't it? You know, someone sticking it up to his boss, saying "fuck you" to his boss. I mean, we all would love to do that, like Austin did, week after week after week after week. What would you say was your favorite moment of Austin giving it to McMahon?
It must be the Bang 316.
Really? That is good. You really makes him put Austin 316 says, "I just pissed my pants."
Yeah, okay. that was iconic.
It's a good one, but there's another one that's my favourite.
You're talking about the bedpan?
It's the bedpan. To this day, like that sound with like
he properly fucking connected with that shit.
But man's like in hospital and he's like, "Oh, I'm in so much pain." Oh, and then like you know, it's Austin there, and it's just it's just watch it on YouTube if you're listening. Just look for Stone Cold Steve Austin or Vince McMahon bedpan. It's just comedy gold. Did you know that Vince McMahon had said that he I don't think he's ever revealed numbers nowadays. Who knows? Because Cena was on top for longer, let's say, than both Austin and The Rock. Than The Rock and Hulk Hogan. But they asked him who made more money, Austin or Hulk Hogan. And what he did say is that Hogan was obviously on top for like a long, long time, whereas Austin was on top for a couple of years, and that was it. And he said he made enough money. He wouldn't even say, like in terms of like volume over a period of time, like that's how successful he was. As successful as Hulk
Those
Hogan.
T-shirts alone, yeah.
But then it went from 316 to the skull to what, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy. Great stuff, man. Yeah, he's great. He is great. I do, yeah. I mean, one of my favorite moments of his, really simple, Mark, and it's just awareness, right? It's one of his matches against Bret Hart, and it's before the match starts, and I think he comes in first, and he's hanging on the turnbuckle, right? And Bret Hart comes in, and Bret Hart's looking at him. The camera just happens to be behind Austin, over his shoulder, and you see him just look at the camera and sort of then just dive at Bret Hart and just slew feast press him instantly, and it just looks, you know, he played up to the camera like that, and just looked at the camera like, wink, watch this, like, you know. It's the way he does it, the way he used to shake his head around. Remember the taunt that you could do in the wrestling, the head shaking, like, what the fuck, man? What a monster, what a lunatic. Like, not only like one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, but maybe one of the greatest television characters of all time, you know?
Yeah.
I would go far as say that, so, yeah. Great stuff, mate, great stuff. So that's your number 2, yeah? Anything else to say about Austin?
Nah, man.
Okay, my number 1 is...
do you want to do the honourable mentions first?
Oh, yeah, let's do the honourable mentions. Okay, so, yeah, I just mentioned that Stone Cold was an honourable mention, so then who's your next honourable mention?
Okay, this is a guy that was never going to make my list, but fuck it, I've got to give him a shout-out. I fucking love the guy. It's Norman Smiley.
Yeah!
I love Norman Smiley, man. He's a guy that... Yeah, I mean, with his gimmick, he was never going to make it anything other than like the lower to mid-card. But fuck it if he didn't put a smile on my face every time I saw him, man.
Yeah, he's good. He was good.
Yeah.
Okay then. So, I would say mine are a bit more mainstream. Shawn Michaels is in my honorable mentions.
Yeah, you got to give him credit. Yeah.
You know, like one of the
greatest
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the greatest works in the history of the business, obviously. Had a better second run, in my opinion. Had better matches in his second run after he was told he was never going to wrestle again. Back-to-back WrestleManias with The Undertaker.
Yeah, those truly were exceptional.
Yeah, great bump taker. Even though it's hilarious, he ruined Hulk Hogan's career. Yeah,
I mean, you can put him down for his crimes, but fuck it if he didn't make a little bit of credit back with that one.
So, I mean, tag teaming with God, weird, but okay. Nothing wrong being a Christian. Anyway, next for you?
For me, next one would be William Regal.
I have William Regal as well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the fucking Arnold Rimmer of wrestling.
Absolutely.
The man, brilliant wrestler, clearly dangerous if he wanted to be, but more committed to the bit. He had the facial expressions and everything. He just a downright entertaining guy to watch.
Yeah, great on the mic. Really funny when he was wasn't he like a PM for a while in WWF, wasn't he? That was really good. When he drank the piss, that face.
Him and Jericho's feud,
yeah. Funny as fuck.
They never leaned into him though as hard as they could. I mean, there were times when they were gonna, but unfortunately, he had some issues with drugs behind the scenes, and
unfortunately,
yeah, that kind of hamstrung his career, which he owned totally. He never backed down from taking any sort of responsibility for that. So credit where credit's due on that one, I guess. Mm-hmm. But a man that I feel deserved a little more.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm gonna say my next one is Booker T.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah. I mean, I love Booker T back in the day. He was one of my favorite wrestlers when I was younger.
He was like a rising star, wasn't he? In WCW, he clearly had more charisma and more ability than his brother Stevie Ray in his tag team Harlem Heat, and it was like him and DDP as well. Like so many in that era, they were just you could just see they just had something, that X factor, that's something special about them. They just had the charisma, and obviously, Mark, we must respect Booker T.
My God, man, it was just my God. That was the funniest shit that I'd ever seen.
Another wrestler, amazing at rebuilding his career with multiple gimmicks and whatever. Great, yeah, he's great. He was great. So another one for you.
This one, not technically a wrestler, but nonetheless, give him a shout out for his on-screen persona, and that would be Eric Bischoff.
Yeah. He's great on the podcast 83 weeks.
Yeah, I love listening to him talk. I've read his book, Cash Equals Controversy.
Yeah.
And there was something iconic about that moment when he walked out on WWE television.
Yeah.
With that music blaring, I'm back and better than ever. And hugging Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
That was anyone who had been a fan during the Monday Night Wars. That was an utterly groundbreaking moment to think that these two rivals would be like that, and you thought they would never, considering the amount of conniving and shit throwing they went through during that era. Who could? I mean, at the end of the day, they both want to make money, and they made a lot of money.
Bischoff knew what was good for business.
Yes,
the grand scheme of things, So yeah, I'm with you there on Bischoff. Definitely, he's I'm a bit of a Bischoff mark, I would say, to be honest with you. Yeah, I am. So I've read the book as well. I enjoy him on the podcast. I enjoy his opinions. I don't always agree with him.
And you don't always trust him.
No, exactly. You always feel like you're getting some of the truth, but at least it's an interesting truth, at least.
This is true.
He even put it up in the ring, didn't he? Not great, but, he put it up in the ring a few times. So, yeah. I'm going to cheat a little bit, Mark. So I'm going to say I've got another honourable mention is Ricky Steamboat, which I've already mentioned in the podcast a few times. But there is one more honourable mention, which I'm going to I don't know, I just kind of want to get it out there. He would have been my number one 20 years ago, and that's Chris Benoit.
But unfortunately...
Yeah. Unfortunately, what happened. Whatever happened, but on paper, possibly... For me personally, the greatest worker in the history of the business. Really. Just, it is what it is, though, isn't it? So.
It is unfortunate.
Yeah, so that's my last honourable mention.
Yeah, I've finished my honourable mentions as well.
Excellent. Okay, then, let's get off with the number one, Mark. Do you know who my number one's going to be?
I think so.
My number one is Bret the Hitman Hart.
Of course,
this might be a surprise to some people who know me because Bret Hart was not my favourite wrestler when I was a kid, but I liked him. He was actually my brother's favourite wrestler. I remember one Christmas, there's actually a photo of me holding my Christmas present, which was a Game Boy, and my brother's holding a Christmas present, which is a Bret the Hitman Hart action figure. I always liked him, But he's someone that I've grown to appreciate more and more and more as I've gotten older. You know, the Wrestling with Shadows documentary is like incredibly fascinating, easily accessible on YouTube, and it's one of the earliest like backdoor insights into the business.
Especially during the era that it took place as well with
Well, this
the
is what I'm saying.
Montreal. Yeah.
Exactly what happened, isn't it? He had a camera crew follow him for a year, and that same year the Montreal screw job happened, where like he was, screwed over by Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels. Whoever's right, whoever's wrong, not really interested in that. It's a complex situation, but Brett was not necessarily he's obviously still alive, not necessarily the best on the mic, but he did do good promos. I think his best promos involved Owen, for definite, his brother.
Oh, the brothers, the two of them were brilliant.
Yeah, their feud was like absolutely fucking amazing, especially that cage match at the King of the Ring where they were
with the reversal of the sharpshooter.
Yeah, and also when they were diving for the door as well. Like, just like absolutely incredible series of matches. Obviously, when Brett did double duty for that WrestleMania, when Owen beat him at the beginning as well.
And then Hart won the title later.
Yeah, great.
And the way Owen came out and was just staring him down, saying, "What about me?"
Yeah, it's great. A great feud. A great fucking feud. They had so many great matches. Owen, unfortunately, passed away too young. So many great matches himself, but which leads, of course, to the Bret Hart, Chris Benoit Memorial Iron Man match in WCW, which was an absolute fucking banger. They also had a bunch of great matches together in WCW. Any match featuring Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels obviously was always a classic. He had great matches with Mr. Perfect. There was that great match he had with British Bulldog, SummerSlam '92 in Wembley, which we found out years later had a lot more down to it. Obviously, Bret Hart put British Bulldog over.
Yeah, he carried him from the south of things.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, he put him over, and I remember watching it as a kid, and being amazed. I was more of a Bulldog fan in those days, to be honest with you, and just remember watching it, thinking it was a great match. And we found out that Bulldog was like physically completely annihilated and high as fuck on painkillers, and Bret Hart carried him, and no one knew. Like, I mean, then obviously there's anything involving him and Stone Cold. The double heel turn, face turn, where he turned heel and turned Austin face in the same match. But they had great matches anyway. Great matches with great psychology. Before that, we did the Hart Foundation heel faction was good, but the truth is, Mark, the reason why Bret Hart is my favourite wrestler of all time, I mean, yes, you have Bret's rope. Yes, you have Bret Hart's 5 moves of doom. But in an era, because if Bret Hart was around today, say in his early 30s, he'd be top of the game, if you ask me. He'd be as good as anyone today.
Yeah.
Because when he was WWF champion, it was in an era where WWF was still pushing the cartoony stuff, and Vince McMahon was still unsure about big wrestlers, let's say. Small wrestlers. It was during the era when the anti-hero was becoming popular. Shawn Michaels, obviously, was trying to get cheers, and wow, people weren't sure about Shawn Michaels. But when you had him coming out in those weird sexualized stirrups and whatever,
he was only just out of the Rockers at that point, wasn't he? Really?
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't until later in life with Degeneration X when Shawn Michaels, I think, really found his true popularity. But he was the champ at the wrong time, unfortunately, which I think is a shame. Because he sort of fucking carried the company through like the biggest slop. I mean, this is the era of Doink, the clown, and God knows how much awfulness that was happening at the time. But Bret always put good matches on. And one thing I always felt about Bret's matches is that the psychology was always top notch. Bret made his matches seem real, He always looked like it hurt him as much, He always looked fucked. Knackered, exhausted. He took crazy bumps. The Bret collarbone bump, man. I mean, how many times did he take that? That very brutal bump. There's just something about him in the ring that I just find absolutely enthralling every single time. When I go back and watch him, a huge crime I would say is that him and Sting never had the right match. Unfortunately, maybe because they're both too old. I think Bret was soul destroyed when he was in WCW by the Montreal Screwjob because of the fact WCW didn't know what to do with him. But when you go back and watch his best matches, like I think they hold up. I think they absolutely hold up, and it's so believable. You know, he made it look so believable and so real, with a real character, and like he had banging music. And there was something about his glasses. I kind of liked him putting the glasses on the kid in the crowd as well. You know, cheesy I suppose, but I always wanted to be that kid,
Yeah.
even now. So yeah. But I think really, if I was to nail it down to one thing, it would be his feud with Austin. You know, they just like that double turn match. You watch now that iconic image of like Austin bleeding, which they took the fine, didn't they? They weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
They just did it anyway because they believed in it. You know, Bret was someone who knew it was right for business, and even though he had shown apprehension about the rising anti-heroes, I think that was more to Shawn Michaels. Like he knew that Austin was the next big thing, and he fucking put him over. And basically, he was the one that strapped the rocket to his back. And that iconic image of Bret having him in that fucking sharpshooter with all that blood pouring down Austin's face.
That made Austin.
Exactly. And him refusing to tap out. And Bret Hart holding on to it for even longer than he should. Like, what a great moment. Iconic. You know, so smart. You know, so just one of the greatest moments in wrestling for me personally. Because of what, you know, the match itself and what it led to, what led up to it, that nexus of time surrounding it. Just, yeah, absolutely phenomenal. So, yeah, Bret Hart, my number one.
That's a good shout, man. It's not my number one, but I'll respect it. Now, for me, myself, I'm going to be a touch cheeky.
Okay.
So, my number one, technically, I suppose you could say that I'm choosing 3 wrestlers here.
I know it is.
And that'd be the great Mick Foley.
Of course. Since I remember, mate, you know, since we were kids, he's always been your favourite.
I fucking love it. I mean, the thing that cemented him as my favourite, I mean, in the lead up to this match, I always watched him. I always found him immensely interesting because he wasn't like other wrestlers.
No.
In an era when you had growing talent, I mean, the thing about Mick Foley is that, I mean, he's technically talented, I guess.
I say he's more like a force of will.
Yes, like the man has got, I mean, in his own words, testicular fortitude.
Yes.
He has a will and a drive that you rarely see in any other wrestler. That he is willing to, like, through the pure force of just will, he will drive himself through a move. Not because he's technically talented in being able to achieve it, but through pure force of nature. And he's a guy that is thankful to be there. Yeah. Every step of the way, you can see the utter joy that's on his face to be a wrestler and actually reach the top. And this was cemented at the King of the Ring 98. A match that, by all accounts, should not have gone the way it went. I mean, yeah, the first launching off the cage was planned. The second one through it, not so much. A match that reached levels of brutality which people are still trying to emulate to this day. And I don't think they'll ever achieve it. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you smash a fluorescent tube over someone's head, you ain't doing anything close to what Mick Foley achieved. Man, I get a genuine love for the industry from this man.
Yeah, I know. I get that as well. There's something like so endearing about this man.
He's just, and the fact that when he interacts with other characters, like when he was interacting with The Rock, the fact that they are such polar opposites.
It's very funny.
They just work so well together that Mick knows exactly what makes money. He's got an understanding of the industry on a guttural level. And through his different characters, whether it be Mankind, whether it be Cactus Jack, or whether it be Dude Love, the fact that he managed to play all 3 of them in one Royal Rumble was brilliant. I've always really appreciated watching him in whatever capacity. I still love that sequence where him and Triple H were feuding. And it's him as Mankind. And the build-up to it was the fact that the entirety of DX had jumped Mankind and beaten the living shit out of him. And he came out to the ring, like walking down the ramp, and he said, "You really did a number on me, Triple H. I understand that I don't think I'm going to be able to compete in our match tomorrow night." And the crowd's booing over the fact that it looks like he's like jumping out of the match. And he goes, "However, I got a replacement. I think you know him. His name is Cactus Jack." And he just him putting his mask off. Crowd lost their shit. And it was just
his other wrestling persona.
Yes, it's just
He's great. He's great. He's a treasure.
Yes, and this man outside the ring, I mean, he is a New York Times bestseller. His books are fucking iconic. He defined what makes a wrestling autobiography for me because his was one of the first ones that I read.
Mm-hmm.
And reading the play-by-play for what happened in Hell in a Cell '98 was fucking harrowing. So, yeah, man, I fucking love Mick Foley.
I've always felt like he was like a Jackie Chan wrestler, like, you know, just like all about like the comedy bumps, but like, you know, you can't really turn around and say he obviously has got some like fucking skill. Obviously, Jackie Chan has lots of skill, but like it was all about the bumps, you know. But for me, it was the documentary Beyond the Mat that actually really made me love him because that follows him, doesn't it, through quite a long time. Very insightful stuff. But yeah, he's a treasure. That's what it is, isn't he?
He's a wrestler that you wouldn't have put down to being athletically gifted. He doesn't have the look. He doesn't have. I mean, his mic work is brilliant because of the love he has for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what he does put into the ring comes from pure drive.
Yes. You admire his passion for the business, don't you?
I mean, he's one of the only men that would ever do the elbow drop off of the apron to the concrete.
Yeah.
Most men wouldn't do that because of the torture that you're putting your hips through every time you slam down. But he was like, "It's a good move. I'm doing it."
Yeah.
And he'd just take it. And my God, it's incredible that he hasn't been involved in some sort of scandal involving like drug use behind the scenes or something like that. But he
of course.
The fact that he lost his ear in Germany.
Yes, of course, yes.
Like in a match versus Vader where the ropes were ratcheted too tight and during a move, his ear got torn off. And he finished the fucking match.
Crazy.
It's just, the man is insane. And I appreciate every moment he ever spent inside the ring because he gave everything. He gave body parts to the industry.
He did. There's shots of like he's like the daughters watching the Hell in the Cell match with the Undertaker. It's like harrowing, isn't it?
God, yeah.
Harrowing. Those
Holy
poor kids
shit,
watching their dads go through that. My God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. In my opinion, whilst may not be the most technically gifted, but my God, no one can argue that he did that if anyone else gave any more.
Yeah, I would possibly agree with that. I don't think anyone gave any more than him, for sure. Yeah. So yeah. Oh. Well, I have to say, Mark, not many surprises for me personally in your list, especially your number one, but a good list.
Yeah.
Do you want to run it down? Let's hear what you did. From 10 to 1, please, Mark.
Okay, so we have Dean Malenko, Bryan Danielson, Sami Zayn, Kurt Angle, Ric Flair, The Rock, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Jericho, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mick Foley.
Very good. Mine was Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, Chris Jericho, Rob Van Dam, Kurt Angle, AJ Styles, Kurt Hennig, always known as Mr. Perfect, the Macho Man, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Sting, and finally Bret the Hitman Hart. This was a good episode, Mike. I enjoyed talking about this tonight.
This is the one that came from the heart.
Yeah, not so much about narrative discussion here, but you know what? We fucking poured our hearts out talking about the Iron Claw earlier on in the episode.
I know, I wasn't ready to get to that emotional level again.
Yeah. So I think like a nice, like friendly chit chat about our favourite wrestlers just to close the episode off was a good choice. So yeah, I think we should call it there. What do you think?
I'm in it. I'm into it, man. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, from now on, that's it. The podcast is finished. For info on the music we've used, please see the episode description. You can follow me at writer GM Groves on Twitter, Twitter, X, Facebook, and Instagram. Mark?
Well, I imagine that everyone would like to know where they can find me. In fact, I think some people probably have some guesses as to the sort of thing I was going to say right now. I'd probably come up with some cheap joke or some wrestling innuendo. Well, to invoke the late, great Rowdy Roddy Piper, just when you think you've got all the answers, I change all the questions.
how did we neither of us talk about Roddy Piper today as well? Well, you did a little bit. Oh, he's a fucking great.
He was a legend.
Oh, yeah, I used to love his podcast as well. Anyway, if you want to read my work, check out the website in the podcast episode description. There you will find articles, reviews, and some fiction. So without further ado, I will bid you farewell. Hopefully, we will see you soon.
Catch you later.